Imagine. You wake up to the sound of running water and distant thunder. The air is heavy with the scent of clay and wet earth. Outside your hut, the horizon glows with the first light of dawn, not over forest or sea, but over two mighty rivers twisting through the desert. This is Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. Before Egypt raised its pyramids, before Greece carved its statues, before Rome even dreamed of conquest, here, humanity took its first steps toward civilization. The year? Perhaps 5,000 years before the birth of Christ. The place? A plain of endless mud and water, shimmering under a copper sky. And you, standing barefoot in the damp silt, are among the first people to ever call yourselves civilized. The dawn begins quietly, a faint blue mist rising from the reeds. You hear insects hum near the banks, a heron cry as it lifts from the shallows, and far across the plain, the deep rumble of thunder where the Tigris meets the sky. But there's another sound beneath the storm, the rhythm of wooden tools against earth, the murmur of human voices chanting to unseen gods. A city is waking. Its name is Uruk. From afar, it seems impossible, walls of sun-baked brick stretching for miles, glinting like gold in the rising light. Smoke curls from hundreds of hearths. The air smells of fish and barley bread, of oil lamps and wet clay. If you listen closely, you can hear the pulse of history beginning. You walk toward it, your feet sinking into the mud of the floodplain. The ground trembles slightly as oxen drag plows through the fields nearby. Men with bronzed arms and reed baskets move in slow rhythm, their feet beating time with the pulse of the land. Every furrow they cut, every grain they sow, is an act of defiance against chaos. The rivers, after all, are both creators and destroyers. They feed and they drown, bless and betray. When the rains come too strong in the north, the water rises fast. Fields vanish overnight. Homes dissolve into mud. The Sumerians learned early that survival meant cooperation, digging canals, building levees, controlling the floods through sweat and faith. It's here that humanity learned its first great lesson, that civilization begins not with comfort, but with control. You step onto a narrow causeway where the reeds part, and ahead the city looms larger. Children splash in the shallows, chasing fish with wicker traps. Women carry jars of water on their heads, their linen skirts brushing the clay. The scent of smoke drifts from bakeries, barley flour roasting on hot stones. And above it all, rising like a mountain from the flat earth, stands a ziggurat, a great step tower of mud brick climbing toward heaven. At its summit, the temple of Inanna, goddess of love and war, gleams in the early light. Its copper doors shimmer like fire. Priests move along its terraces, white-robed and solemn, pouring libations of oil that glisten as they spill into the dust. The wind carries their chanting down to you, words as old as the first dawn. Lady of Heaven, keeper of the morning star, bringer of rain and fury, watch over your city. The first prayers ever spoken to a god who might be listening. Inside the walls, the city breathes like a living thing. Narrow streets twist between houses of sun-dried brick, their walls pale as bone. Dogs bark. A potter's wheel hums. Somewhere, a newborn wails and is hushed with a lullaby that will one day become a hymn. You pass a courtyard where men sit around a large clay jar, sipping beer through reed straws. It's thick, dark, and warm, half nourishment, half ritual. The beer itself is holy, a gift from Nikasi, the goddess of brewing. Even in these first cities, daily life and divinity are never far apart. Every act, tilling the field, kneading the dough, carving the seal, is performed under watchful eyes. The Sumerians believed the gods created humans not out of love, but out of necessity, to relieve them of labor, to tend their fields, to feed their altars. So people work not just for survival, but for divine obligation. Every harvest is a prayer. Every brick an offering. You pause before a craftsman's stall. He shapes a lump of clay into a tablet, pressing symbols into it with the tip of a reed. His hands are steady, His movement's patient, but what he's doing is revolutionary. He is writing. Each wedge-shaped mark he makes stands for a word, a number, an idea. The tablet records the movement of grain, the measure of barley, the offering of sheep, the transactions of a city learning to remember. The language is called cuneiform, meaning wedge-shaped. And though the scribe doesn't know it, his quiet work will echo across 5,000 years, through Babylon, through Persia, through Greece and Rome, and into every alphabet that will ever be carved, printed, or typed by human hands. For the first time in all of human history, thought is leaving the mind and entering matter. By midday, the city hums with heat. The sun burns like molten bronze overhead. The streets shimmer with mirages, dogs pant in the shadows. You wander toward the marketplace, the heart of Uruk's chaos and invention. Traders from distant lands have arrived, men with skin tanned dark by the desert winds, carrying baskets of lapis lazuli and carnelian, beads carved from shells found hundreds of miles away. Women haggle over baskets of dates, onions, and dried fish. The air buzzes with the music of commerce, voices rising, coins clinking, donkeys braying. You smell oil, sweat, roasted barley, incense from a nearby temple. And beneath it all, always, the river, that faint metallic tang of silt and life. Near the edge of the market stands a small shrine. Its statue is crude, barely human, a figure with wide, staring eyes and clasped hands carved from gypsum. Its gaze seems to follow you. You ask who it is. A merchant tells you softly. He is the watcher, the one who listens when no one else does. You realize this, too, is new, the idea that belief itself could be embodied, that devotion could take form in stone. For millennia, humans prayed to wind, to thunder, to the moon, forces vast and unseen. But here, in this cradle of brick and clay, the divine has a face. And that changes everything. When evening falls, the heat fades. The river glows with sunset, copper melting into gold. You sit on the city wall and watch as torches flicker to life below. Smoke rises from thousands of hearths, coiling into the darkening sky. Somewhere, a flute begins to play, a slow, mournful melody that drifts like the river itself. Children chase each other through the alleys, their laughter echoing off the brick. A fisherman returns from the river, his net heavy with silver-scaled fish that flash in the dying light. A potter kneels beside his kiln, whispering a small prayer before closing its lid. The world feels ancient already, as if it has always been here. You close your eyes and listen to the heartbeat of Uruk, the sound of hammers, of footsteps, of voices singing to the gods. You realize you are hearing not just a city, but a beginning, the slow emergence of everything that will one day define us: writing, law, trade, faith, art, ambition. The Sumerians don't yet know what they've started. They cannot imagine the empires to come, the languages to be born, the stories to be told. They simply live, planting barley, shaping clay, gazing at stars, whispering prayers. But in doing so, they've done something immortal. They've turned survival into civilization. Dawn comes again, not with fanfare, but with that quiet insistence that life in Sumer never stops. You stir from your mat of woven reeds to the sound of water, steady, eternal. The rivers are speaking again. Their voices are different now. The Tigris, wild and restless, races along the northern horizon, its current slicing through the plains like a living blade. The Euphrates, slower, deeper, gliding in deliberate curves through the southern marshes. Two tempers. Two moods. And between them, the fragile balance where humanity has staked its claim. You step outside into the cool light of early morning. The world still smells of wet clay and ash, of barley and smoke. Dew clings to the reeds, and a heron drifts slow over the canal, its reflection rippling the water's glassy skin. The sky is pale, unformed, as though the gods themselves are still painting it. All around you, life stirs in rhythm with the rivers. Farmers lead oxen yoked to wooden plows, their hooves sinking deep into the mud. Men shout across the fields, voices echoing off the water. The earth here is rich, so dark it stains the fingers black. Each handful of soil holds promise. Without the rivers, this land would be desert. With them, it is paradise, and peril intertwined. The rivers giveth, and the rivers taketh away. They flood without warning, turning villages into floating ghosts. Yet when the waters retreat, they leave behind silt as fine as flour, the secret ingredient of civilization. Every grain of barley, every loaf of bread, every brick of every wall owes its life to that shifting boundary between chaos and creation. That's why the Sumerians do not simply live by the rivers. They worship them. They fear them. They name their children after them. You walk along one of the great canals, watching as children splash in the shallows, laughter echoing between banks lined with date palms. Farther ahead, a group of men repair a breach in the embankment. Their hands are slick with mud, their bodies gleaming with sweat. One hums softly, a tune older than memory, to keep the rhythm of labor. At the canal's edge, a woman fills jars with water. She moves with careful grace, the clay vessels balanced perfectly on her shoulders. Each jar is precious. In this world, water is wealth. Her bracelets clink softly as she turns, and the sunlight catches on them, bronze gleaming like captured fire. You realize she wears the river's reflection on her skin. The path bends toward a higher ridge, and from there you see it, the vast patchwork of Sumer's fields stretching outward in every direction. Wheat and barley ripple in the wind like golden waves. Between them run irrigation channels, straight and deliberate, glinting like threads of light. Beyond those, flocks of sheep graze on stubbled ground, tended by boys who whistle to keep them close. From above, the land looks almost like a map drawn by divine hands, a world of geometry and purpose, carved from chaos. You pause to drink from a water skin offered by a passing worker. The taste is earthy, faintly metallic. It's not clean by your standards, but here it's the taste of life itself. He smiles with cracked lips. The river's good this year, he says. She's gentle. And you can tell, by the way he speaks of it, that the rivers are not mere water to these people. They are beings. Moods. Mothers and monsters both. The Sumerians have no illusions about control. They dig, they pray, they hope, but deep down, they know, the water always decides. By midday, the heat thickens until the horizon dances. The air smells of dust and reeds baking in the sun. Cicadas sing from the marsh grass. Every sound becomes slower, heavier. Even the river's voice seems to hush beneath the weight of light. You find shade beneath a tamarisk tree near a small fishing village. The huts here are made of bundled reeds bound with rope, simple, temporary, yet strangely beautiful. Smoke curls from the fire pits where fish are being dried, their silver skins glinting in the light like shards of metal. A child runs past with a basket of shells, laughing as he spills half of them into the sand. An old man sits nearby, weaving a fishing net. His fingers move automatically, the fibers slipping between them like water. When you greet him, he nods but doesn't stop working. The river feeds us, he says quietly. But she listens too. You ask what he means. He glances toward the water, squinting against the glare. If you curse her, she hears. If you thank her, she hears. If you forget her, she remembers. He dips the net into the water and tests its weight. See how she moves? He says softly. Always hungry. Always taking something. You watch as the current pulls at the net like a living thing, and for a brief moment, it feels as though the old man isn't fishing, he's conversing. The Sumerians believe that their gods live in these waters. That the deep is not empty, but full of spirits, monsters, and divine forces. The abyss has a name, Abzu, the freshwater ocean beneath the earth, ruled by the god Enki. He is the Lord of Wisdom, the great engineer, the keeper of secrets. They say he carved the first canals and taught humankind the art of irrigation. When the rivers swell and overflow, it's because Enki has stirred in his sleep. To live here is to exist in a constant dialogue with the unseen, between what can be built and what can be broken. By late afternoon, the air begins to change. The wind shifts, cool, carrying the sharp scent of rain from far away. Clouds gather on the horizon, dark and towering, and the fields ripple as the breeze passes through them like a breath. The farmers look up. The children stop their play. Everyone knows the signs. Within minutes, the first drops begin to fall, large, warm, splattering against the cracked earth. Then more, faster, until the air itself seems to dissolve into water. You take shelter under a wooden awning, watching as the world blurs into silver. The smell of wet dust rises, sharp, electric, alive. Lightning splits the sky. Thunder rolls across the plains like the voice of a god clearing his throat. In Sumer, rain is both miracle and omen. Too little, and the fields wither. Too much, and the rivers burst their bounds. Every storm is a negotiation with fate. When the rain eases, the ground steams. The river, swollen and quickened, churns with silt the color of blood. You follow it as it flows southward, carrying the detritus of distant mountains, flakes of stone, seeds, fragments of civilization yet unborn. As evening falls, the sky clears. The air cools, heavy with moisture. Frogs begin their rhythmic chorus in the marshes, and fireflies blink like embers in the reeds. The rivers have calmed again, their fury spent. In the fading light, you see the reflections of the city's walls mirrored in the still canals, the illusion of two worlds, one above and one below, each watching the other. You find yourself drawn to a raised embankment where a group of men and women stand together, singing softly to the setting sun. They hold small bowls of grain and pour them slowly into the river, watching the grains swirl away. Their song is simple, almost like a hum, a gesture of gratitude, or perhaps apology. One of them turns to you, smiling faintly. "The day belongs to us," she says, "but the night belongs to the river." Her words stay with you long after they drift away into the darkness. Night again. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth and the faint sweetness of dates from the orchards nearby. Somewhere, a priest on the ziggurat marks their positions, pressing symbols into a clay tablet. The heavens are his calendar, the rivers his clock. The Sumerians have learned that both sky and water obey patterns, rhythms that can be measured, predicted, trusted. That realization, that the world has order, will become the foundation of everything. From it will grow writing, mathematics, law, religion, even empire. And all of it began here, between the rivers, with the simple act of watching. The night has nearly passed. The first streaks of dawn spill across the horizon, not sudden, but gradual, like ink diffusing through water. The rivers gleam again, their surfaces calm now after the storm. Mist clings to the lowlands, wrapping the canals in silver. The earth smells new, rinsed and alive. Somewhere behind you, a rooster calls. A second answers. Then the faint rhythmic thud of tools begins again, wood on clay, the eternal heartbeat of Sumer. The world does not sleep long here. Dawn is always work's first call. You shoulder your satchel, a symbolic thing, a simple act, and begin walking east, following the narrow road that leads away from the fields and into the growing hum of a city. The path curves through groves of date palms, past irrigation channels glinting with sunlight. You hear voices ahead, traders, herders, priests, the human chorus of civilization. The smell changes first. You catch it before you even see the walls, smoke, oil, incense, the faint tang of copper. Civilization always smells of fire and sweat. And then, as the haze of morning clears, you see it, the skyline of Uruk, the city of Gilgamesh, the shining child of the goddess Inanna, the beating heart of Sumer. It rises not like a heap of dwellings but like a single vast creation, walls of sun-baked bricks so tall they cast shadows across the plains. From a distance, the color shifts with the light, ochre at dawn, gold at noon, blood red at dusk. Beneath those walls lies a world in motion, the first metropolis, built not merely to survive but to glorify. You pass through the outer gate, its wood reinforced with copper bands, its lintel carved with symbols of lions and stars. The guards, bare-chested and stern, nod as you enter. Inside, sound hits you like heat, a wash of life and noise. Uruk breathes. The streets pulse with traders calling out their wares. Copper from Megan! Lapis from the east! The cries echo between narrow walls. Donkeys bray, children chase one another through the dust, women in linen robes haggle over baskets of barley. The air hums with movement, the shuffle of sandals, the clatter of pots, the hum of conversation in a language both musical and mathematical. Every corner of the city feels alive, and yet ordered. The avenues align like veins feeding toward a single heart. The ziggurat dominates everything, its layered terraces ascending step by step toward the heavens. The temple district lies at its base, surrounded by colonnades and courtyards where priests move in deliberate procession. They carry bronze bowls filled with oil, grain, and water, the three gifts of the land. The scent of incense thickens the air until you taste it on your tongue, frankincense, myrrh, and something older, a sweetness like burned honey. Drums sound softly from the upper terraces, beating the rhythm of morning ritual. The crowd lowers their voices. A priest in a robe of white linen raises his arms toward the east. The first light touches the copper peak of the ziggurat, igniting it into fire. Gasps ripple through the gathering. The priest's voice carries, strong and steady. Lady Inanna, Queen of Heaven, Light of the Morning Star, behold your city. See the smoke of our offerings. Drink our prayers. The people bow their heads. The scent of roasted grain drifts upward. You can almost feel the heat of belief itself radiating through the stones beneath your feet. This is not a mere building. It is a stairway for souls, a bridge of baked earth reaching toward the sky. You climb the temple steps slowly, each one warm from the rising sun. The walls beside you are etched with thousands of tiny bricks, each impressed by a laborer's hands, each bearing the seal of a king who wished to be remembered. The steps grow steeper. The city below shrinks to a pattern of streets, courtyards, and canals, glittering like veins of bronze and silver. At the summit, the world feels silent, as if even the wind has paused. The temple itself is simple, a single chamber draped in linen, with a polished altar of stone. A young priestess tends a small fire at its center. She moves with careful grace, feeding oil into the flame until it burns steady and blue. When she speaks, her voice is soft but certain. All things rise from the mud, she says, but only those that reach upward are remembered. You ask if she believes the gods truly live above. She smiles, not mockingly, but with patience. They live where our hands can't reach, she says. So we build higher. You look down from the terrace. The wind carries the sounds of the city, hammering, laughter, the splash of water against stone. Below, men shape clay bricks and carry them to build new homes. Beyond them stretch the fields, green veins spreading outward from the canals. From up here, it all seems to move together, as though the city itself were one great organism, breathing through its people. The priestess notices your gaze. Every street, she says, leads back to the temple. Every wall remembers its maker. The gods don't just live in heaven. They live in the hands that build. Her words settle over you like dust, quiet but indelible. You descend back into the city as the sun climbs higher. The streets are narrower here, shaded by high mud brick walls. You pass under woven awnings where merchants trade in copper tools, lapis beads, and carved cylinder seals used to stamp contracts into clay. A scribe sits in the corner of one courtyard, tablet balanced on his knee, stylus moving with mechanical precision. His eyes are sharp, his expression blank, the face of concentration. You kneel beside him, watching. The clay tablet glistens wetly. Each wedge mark he presses carries weight, not just words, but property, promise, debt. He glances up briefly. Trade of silver for barley, he says, as if reciting a prayer. Then, almost absent-mindedly, the gods gave us water, and we made words. We use both to hold back chaos. Nearby, two men argue over the weight of grain. A third mediates, invoking the king's measure. The scribe notes their names, their goods, their agreement. You realize you are witnessing one of the first bureaucracies, the invisible architecture that keeps the city breathing. The Sumerians invented not just buildings, but systems. Writing is the mortar between minds. You follow a side street to where artisans work in open courtyards. The air here smells of copper and sweat. Sparks leap from furnaces as blacksmiths hammer molten metal into blades and plowshares. Potters spin their wheels, shaping jars so symmetrical they seem divine. Weavers knot thread into patterned cloth dyed in earthly reds and indigos. A boy no older than 10 turns a potter's wheel with steady hands, his face streaked with clay. When you ask what he's making, he grins, showing a missing tooth. A cup for the gods, he says proudly. Then, lowering his voice, but if my mother likes it, maybe she'll keep it. You laugh softly. Civilization, it seems, always balances the sacred and the mundane. By afternoon, the heat presses down like a living thing. You find shade beneath a colonnade near a large square. It's quieter here. A public fountain trickles in the center, a pool fed by an underground channel from the river. Around it, citizens gather, women washing their hands before prayer, men cooling their faces, children throwing pebbles to watch them sink. An old storyteller sits on the edge of the fountain, surrounded by listeners. His voice carries through the square. Once, long before these walls were built, the gods walked among us. They taught us how to plant, how to speak, how to measure the flood. But when men grew proud, they withdrew, leaving us only their shadows. The children lean in, wide-eyed. The old man smiles. But still we build, he says. Every brick, every song, every story, we build to call them back. A silence follows, the kind that hums with understanding. You realize that here, in this city of clay and faith, building is prayer. Every craftsman, every farmer, every scribe is engaged in an act of worship. Civilization itself is a temple, sprawling, imperfect, eternal. As the afternoon wanes, you wander toward the harbor where the canals widen into the river. Boats of woven reeds bob gently, their sails of flax catching the wind. Fishermen unload their catch, their laughter rising above the creak of wood and rope. Traders shout greetings in half a dozen dialects, Akkadian, Elamite, Amorite, voices blending into a single living tongue. A ship from the north arrives, its hull heavy with timber and stone. Another, from the south, carries copper ingots and jars of oil. The dock hands chant in rhythm as they unload, muscles shining in the sun. The smell of tar, fish, and sweat hangs thick. It strikes you then, this place, this teeming port of mud and water, is the blueprint of every city that will ever follow. Commerce, hierarchy, ritual, law, all born here, where rivers meet stone. You sit on a crate and watch the sunset blaze across the water. The ziggurat stands outlined against the sky, its peak glowing red as if still burning with divine fire. The reflection ripples across the surface, breaking into shards of light. For a moment, it feels as if heaven and earth are touching, joined by the mirrored stairway of the gods. Night returns like the slow closing of a great curtain. The streets dim. Lamps are lit, small bowls of oil, flames dancing in the wind. The city doesn't sleep, it shifts into another rhythm. From distant courtyards comes the sound of drums, soft and steady. Somewhere laughter. Somewhere else chanting. The temples glow faintly, their fires eternal. Priests walk the terraces, offering wine and song. Lovers meet in shadowed alleys, their whispers swallowed by the night. The scent of cooking, onions, garlic, roasted lamb, drifts through the air, mingling with incense. From the ziggurat summit, you hear the night prayers. The words drift down like falling ash. O Inanna, bright star of the evening, who rises and sets with the sun, guard our walls, bless our fields, light our hearts. The tone is softer now, less command, more plea. The city breathes out after a day of labor, surrendering itself to darkness. The lamps are still burning when you wake. Their oil has thinned, the flames smaller now, trembling against the faintest gray light seeping into the sky. The air smells of smoke and damp earth. Somewhere a rooster crows, somewhere else a door creaks open and a voice calls out into the morning, and once again Uruk begins to breathe. The streets are wet from the night's mist. Every wall glistens with dew, each brick catching the earliest sunlight like gold dust. You walk through the quiet alleys toward the quarter of the scribes, a modest corner of the city, but one that hums with the sound of reeds scratching clay. The world here feels different. You can sense it before you understand it, a vibration beneath the noise of daily life, as if the city itself has begun to murmur. The air is heavy with the scent of damp clay and bitumen, and from every open doorway comes the same faint rhythm: tap, press, lift, breathe. Inside a narrow courtyard, men and boys sit cross-legged around low tables. Each holds a small tablet of moist earth and a sharpened reed. The light catches on the wet surfaces as their hands move in deliberate dance. The teacher's voice rises above the sound, calm, patient, repetitive. Make the mark for barley. Yes. Deeper now. The line must be firm, so the god of grain will see your steadiness. Again. You watch as the boy presses the reed into the tablet. The clay yields with a small sigh. The wedge remains, permanent, simple, divine. Now the number, the teacher says. 2 jars, 4 baskets, 1 man. Count it and make it live. The boy hesitates, then marks again. 1 angled stroke, then another. When he looks up, his face shines with the quiet pride of creation. He has done something extraordinary without even knowing it. He has made a thought visible. At first, the Sumerians wrote for necessity. The rivers made life abundant but also complicated. Harvests, debts, trade, offerings to temples, labor owed to kings. Numbers alone could no longer hold the city together. The world had grown too vast to live only in memory. So they shaped tablets of wet clay, soft as skin, and pressed their lives into them. At the beginning, the marks were pictures: a stalk of grain, a sheep, a jar of oil. But the city grew, and so did its language. Pictures blurred into symbols, symbols into patterns. Soon a single wedge could stand for a sound, a name, a god, an idea. And just like that, words, invisible for millennia, took on form. You move deeper into the district, following the sound of water dripping from a clay pipe. Inside another workshop, older scribes work at long benches, copying texts by lamplight. Their fingers are stained with clay, their nails darkened from years of labor. One looks up as you approach. "You're early for market," he says, smiling faintly. His voice is rough from age, yet his eyes gleam sharp as polished obsidian. "I came to see how memory is made," you reply. He chuckles softly. "Memory? We make accounts, not memories. Lists of barley, lists of workers. The gods remember what matters. We only balance what's owed." But then, as he lifts the tablet to inspect it, the lamplight glows across the tiny wedge marks, and his expression softens. "Still," he murmurs, "there is beauty in the balance." You watch him finish a line, then place the tablet carefully on a wooden rack to dry. Dozens of others rest beside it, their surfaces filled with silent symbols. Later, when the sun grows hotter, these will be carried outside and left in the open air until they harden. Some will be stored in temple archives, others buried beneath walls or reused for new accounts. Most will crumble with time. But a few, just a few, will survive for thousands of years, waiting for someone to find them again, long after their makers have turned to dust. Outside, the city brightens. The noise of trade swells, footsteps echo between walls, and the smell of baking bread mixes with the iron scent of river water. You pass a temple granary where women measure grain into baskets, chanting the quantities aloud before the scribe records them. 10 baskets from the west field, 5 from the north, she calls. The scribe nods, presses the stylus, and the number becomes eternal. There is something almost sacred about the simplicity of it. A single mark, a gesture, can now outlive its maker. The realization hits you quietly. This is the first time in human history that people have learned to cheat death, not through myth or monument, but through the humble act of inscription. Words are the new immortality. As the day warms, you find yourself drawn to the great temple library, hidden within the ziggurat's lower halls. The corridor leading to it is dim and cool, the air thick with the smell of baked clay and incense. A torch flickers against the walls, revealing rows upon rows of shelves, not of wood, but of brick, each lined with tablets stacked like loaves of bread. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. The record of a world. You run your fingers along the edges. The clay feels gritty, rough with the weight of years. Some tablets are cracked, their corners broken. Others are still sharp, their lines deep and clear. The writing glitters faintly where it has been polished by countless hands. A young woman kneels at a low table, carefully copying from one tablet to another. Her movements are slow, reverent. When you ask what she's writing, she doesn't look up. "The hymn of Enhedrana," she says softly. "The priestess of the moon." You recognize the name, the daughter of Sargon of Akkad, high priestess of Uar, and the first known poet to sign her work. The woman continues, "My king has made me dwell in darkness, but the light of Inanna shines within me still." Her voice trembles as she reads aloud, and for a moment, the air in the room changes. You feel the centuries collapse into silence. A woman who lived 4,000 years ago is speaking again through her words, as alive as the day they were pressed into clay. The scribe looks up and smiles faintly. "We write so they can speak again," she says. You realize now that writing was never only about counting grain or recording taxes. It was about continuity, the stubborn refusal to let time erase the human voice. Later, outside the library, you find a small kiln near the courtyard wall. The air shimmers with heat, and the smell of burning wood mingles with the metallic tang of baked clay. 2 apprentices crouch near the opening, feeding reeds into the fire. Inside, the tablets glow red. You can hear the faint hiss of moisture evaporating, the crackle of transformation. Clay, once soft and mortal, becomes stone, eternal, unyielding. One of the boys wipes his brow and grins. "The words will last longer than we will," he says. You watch the firelight flicker across his face, and you think, perhaps this is the true birth of civilization, the moment humanity learns not just to live, but to leave a trace. The first written word is not just a record. It is a promise. By midday, the city hums with the energy of commerce. Scribes carry tablets between markets, stamping them with the seals of merchants. Each seal bears its owner's mark: a lion, a star, a fish, a symbol of identity pressed into wax or clay. You stop at one stall where a merchant is selling freshly baked bricks. Each brick bears an inscription along its edge: the name of the king, the temple, and the god for whom it was built. The merchant runs his hand proudly over the carved surface. "Even the walls remember who made them," he says. It's true. Every structure in Uruk is a document, every street, every temple, a text written in the language of stone. The city is both archive and living script, forever rewriting itself. In the shade of a palm grove near the city's edge, you meet another scribe, older, quieter, his robe stained with clay. He sits cross-legged before a low table, surrounded by fragments of tablets. Some bear neat rows of symbols, others are shattered beyond recognition. He picks up a piece and turns it in his hand. "This one tells of a debt paid in barley," he says. This one, a shipment of copper from the mountains. And this? He holds up another, its surface smoother, the signs larger and more careful. This one is a prayer to Nana, the moon god. Written by a woman. Her hand was steady. He sets it down gently. You see, not all writing serves the market. Some serves the soul. You ask him when people began to write prayers instead of numbers. He looks toward the river, its distant shimmer visible through the reeds. When they realize the gods forget, too. He smiles then, not unkindly, and begins to inscribe another tablet. His reed moves slowly, almost tenderly. You can hear the faint rasp of clay giving way, the sound of the world being recorded one heartbeat at a time. By afternoon, the city grows hot and still. Dust hangs in the air like breath. You find yourself in the shade of a colonnade near the temple plaza. The priests have finished their rituals, and the steps of the ziggurat are quiet. A group of children sit nearby, scratching signs into the dirt with sticks. They mimic the gestures of their elders, laughing as they invent their own symbols. One draws a crude fish, another a crooked star. Their teacher claps her hands and says, "Good!" The gods began the same way. You watch them play and realize that invention always begins in imitation. Writing, too, was once a game, a way to play with the world until it revealed its hidden order. Evening comes slowly, soft as dust settling. The city's noise fades into the low hum of insects and distant voices. You walk again toward the river. The water reflects the orange glow of the setting sun, turning every ripple into molten gold. By the bank, a scribe sits alone, his back against a basket of reeds. He writes by the fading light, his face calm, intent. The tablet before him is smaller than the others, delicate, almost private. You ask what he's writing. "A letter," he says. "To a woman who lives across the river." You smile. "Will she be able to read it?" He shrugs, still writing. "No. But the messenger will read it for her. She'll hear my words in his voice." You think about that for a while. The idea of a voice carried across water, across distance, across time. The river murmurs beside you, carrying its own messages downstream. You realize that writing, like the river, is a bridge between people, between moments, between the living and the dead. When the scribe finishes, he lifts the tablet and studies it in the fading light. Then he presses his seal into the wet clay, a small image of a bird in flight. He smiles faintly. "Now she'll know it was mine." He sets the tablet aside to dry. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of water and smoke. As the stars appear, the city quiets. The ziggurat glows faintly against the dark, its upper temple lit by sacred fire. You can hear the soft chanting of priests, the murmur of the river, the sigh of the wind through reeds. You hold in your mind all the sounds of the day, the tapping of reeds on clay, the hiss of the kiln, the whisper of words written for no one but the gods. You realize that something invisible has changed in the world. The night deepens over Uruk, but it does not sleep. Far above the streets, the great ziggurat glows in the starlight, its terraces silvered by the moon. The air hums with quiet music, the rhythm of drums, the sigh of flutes, and from the highest step, a torch burns steady, defying the darkness. You feel it before you see it fully, the pull of the divine rising through the stones. The river murmurs beside you, carrying the city's reflection downstream, and the wet clay underfoot still holds the heat of the day. You look up. The ziggurat towers over everything, layered like the spine of the world, each step narrowing toward heaven, each brick a prayer hardened in the sun. At its base, a line of priests moves slowly through the temple courtyard, carrying bowls of glowing coals. The smoke curls upward in threads of blue and white, fragrant with cedar, myrrh, and bitumen. The smell is thick, sweet, ancient. Somewhere within the smoke, you can almost taste devotion itself, bitter and soft on the back of your tongue. You follow the procession through the gateway, where two stone lions stand guard. Their jaws are open in eternal roar, yet their eyes are calm, watchful, almost merciful. You pass between them and step into the temple court, where the night deepens into something heavier, almost liquid. Here, the sacred and the ordinary dissolve together. The first sound you notice is the beating of drums, low, slow, deliberate. Then the murmur of prayer, dozens of voices chanting in unison, rising and falling like the tide. The words are not yours to understand, but the cadence is unmistakable, the rhythm of human yearning. You stand still as the priests circle the altar. Their robes shimmer faintly in the firelight, each one embroidered with symbols: the star of Inanna, the crescent of Nana, the coiled serpent of Ninjish Zaida. The high priest raises his arms and begins to sing. His voice is old and resonant, filling the air like smoke filling a room. O Lord of the Threshold, you who hold the gate between earth and sky, accept our offering, and remember your people. The others echo him, softer, a harmony that seems to tremble through the very stones. You feel it in your chest, a vibration that bypasses thought. The fire flares, the drums quicken. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence falls. One by one, the priests extinguish their lamps. The darkness feels alive, dense with unseen eyes. And then, from the temple's inner doorway, a single light appears. A woman steps forward, veiled in linen, carrying a small bronze dish in which a flame burns steady and blue. She moves with the slow precision of ritual, her bare feet whispering against the polished floor. When she passes, the air changes, cooler, clearer, as if brushed by the wing of something not entirely human. She sets the flame on the altar. The fire trembles once, then steadies. The priests kneel. The air itself seems to bow. You realize then that you are standing in the physical center of Sumer's world, the axis between gods and men. The temple is not merely a house for prayer. It is a living instrument, built to mirror the structure of the cosmos. Its foundations represent the underworld, where fresh water, the Abzu, sleeps beneath the earth. Its middle chambers stand for the realm of humankind, the surface where crops grow and lives are lived. And its uppermost terrace, open to sky and wind, belongs to the gods themselves. Each level binds heaven and earth together. The ziggurat's shape is no accident. To the Sumerians, mountains were the oldest temples, natural stairways to the divine. But their land was flat, an endless plain of clay and reeds. So they built their own mountains, brick by brick, pulling the heavens closer with every stone. When the floods came and washed the plains clean, the ziggurats stood unmoved. When storms raged, lightning kissed their peaks but could not break them. They were not just temples. They were anchors, the tether between chaos and order. By morning, the ritual smoke has thinned to a pale mist that lingers over the city. You climb the steps as dawn unfolds across the plain. The bricks are warm underfoot, the air scented with last night's incense. Below you, Uruk stretches wide, canals glinting like threads of glass, rooftops smoking from morning fires, people already stirring. Halfway up, a young temple servant passes you, carrying a jar of oil. He moves quickly but pauses long enough to speak. You climb well, he says, smiling shyly. Most men tire before the second tier. You glance down, the stairs below already dizzying. How high does it go? He shrugs. High enough for the gods to see us. Then, lowering his voice, he adds, and high enough that we can almost see them. He continues upward, and you follow. The steps narrow, the air thins. Wind whistles through the edges of the structure, carrying the smell of river silt and sun. You pass shrines on each terrace, small alcoves holding offerings, a loaf of bread, a carved figurine, a single flower left by trembling hands. These are not grand gestures, but simple ones. In Sumer, faith is woven into the smallness of life, a prayer whispered between tasks, a sacrifice folded into daily labor. At the summit, the world opens. The sky is impossibly wide. The city below glows in the early light, the rivers gleaming like twin veins of silver. The wind hums through the pillars. A priest stands at the edge, gazing eastward. His beard is white, his hands folded in silence. When he speaks, his voice carries like the wind itself. "This is where heaven touches the earth," he says, "and where the earth remembers heaven." You ask how long it took to build this place. He smiles, lines deepening around his eyes. "It has never stopped being built," he replies. "Every generation lays its bricks. When a wall falls, another rises. When a god is forgotten, another is named. That is the secret of the temple. It is always becoming." He gestures toward the horizon, where the faint outline of another city's ziggurat stands in the haze. Each one answers the other. Nippur, Lagash, Eridu, they speak across the plains like stars across the sky. The gods do not dwell in only one house. They move among them, as we do. You close your eyes, and the wind rushes past your face, warm, dry, eternal. You feel the vastness of the world stretching in all directions, and the smallness of humankind standing stubbornly within it, building mountains to speak with the divine. When you descend, the city is awake. The courtyards bustle with life. In the temple workshops, artisans polish bronze vessels, mend statues, and prepare offerings. You pass a line of women grinding barley on flat stones, their rhythmic motions timed to a chant. Nearby, 2 temple scribes debate over a tablet listing the weight of silver offerings. Their voices are calm but precise, the language of devotion rendered into numbers. "The gods must be paid correctly," one murmurs, "or they will take interest." Inside a shaded chamber, sculptors carve reliefs into stone slabs. One shows the goddess Inanna descending from heaven, her robes flowing like waves. Another depicts the bull-headed god striding across mountains. Each line is deliberate, each gesture alive. A sculptor pauses to wipe his brow. "Every god has a face," he says, "but the temple gives them a body." He touches the stone with surprising tenderness. When the wind moves through the halls, they breathe. You look around, and you can almost believe it. The walls seem to hum faintly, as if alive with the residue of centuries of worship. Light filters through narrow slits, falling on altars dusted with powdered gold. The smell of oil and cedar fills the air, thick and sweet. This is what faith smells like, tangible, heavy, grounded in earth. By midday, the heat presses down, and the priests begin to prepare the afternoon offerings. You sit in the shadow of a colonnade, watching. They move with choreographed precision, pouring water from copper jugs, scattering grain, lighting incense. Every motion is symbolic, yet every symbol has a practical echo: the water to cool the air, the grain to feed the temple staff, the smoke to keep away insects. In Sumer, spirituality and survival are not separate. The divine is practical, the practical divine. A young acolyte approaches you, carrying a tray of small clay figurines, household gods. Their shapes are simple, barely human: broad shoulders, wide eyes, clasped hands. "For travelers," he says, "a token of blessing." You choose one at random, a small figure with a single carved line for a mouth. Its expression is unreadable, serene and strange. The boy wraps it in linen and smiles. "Keep it near water," he says. "The gods hear best when the river speaks." You slip the figurine into your satchel, and for a moment it feels warm, as if it holds the faint heat of the kiln still. Later, as the sun begins to sink, the temple gates open for the evening procession. The entire city gathers in the plaza: merchants, farmers, nobles, children. Musicians line the steps, drummers, flutists, singers. The air vibrates with sound, with expectation. From within the temple comes the statue of the god, towering, gilded, eyes inlaid with lapis lazuli. The crowd gasps as it emerges, carried on the shoulders of 12 priests. The setting sun catches the gold, and for a moment it seems to glow with life. They carry it slowly through the streets, followed by dancers and torchbearers. The people throw flowers, pour wine on the ground, cry out blessings. You walk among them, swept in their fervor. It is not fear that moves them, but awe, the dizzy joy of standing in the presence of something larger than themselves. A woman beside you lifts her child onto her shoulders. Look, she whispers. That's Enlil, Lord of the Wind. He brings the storms and the harvest. The child stares, wide-eyed, clutching his mother's hair. The statue passes, and the crowd follows, the procession snaking through the city until it returns once more to the ziggurat. At its foot, the high priest raises his hands, and the drums fall silent. He turns to the people and says, "The gods have walked among us today. Let the river sleep in peace." The crowd bows their heads. The last light of the sun fades. The torches flare brighter. And the great doors of the temple close with a sound like thunder. Night again. The city settles into quiet, though the faint hum of the temple lingers. The stars blaze overhead, sharp and endless. You climb once more to the outer wall and look back. The ziggurat gleams under moonlight, serene and immense. The moon is sinking when you finally look away from the ziggurat. Its terraces are pale as bone now, its fire reduced to a faint blue flicker. The last prayers have faded into silence. But in that silence, the gods remain, hovering somewhere between smoke and memory. You walk along the temple wall, feeling the cool breath of the night against your skin. The city below lies in soft darkness, and the river glows faintly where it catches the stars. You think of the priest's words. The temple is always becoming. Perhaps the same is true of the divine. Because here in Sumer, the gods are not distant constellations or abstract laws. They are close, terribly close. They sweat, they hunger, they quarrel. They walk in the dust with humanity, and demand bread for their altars. They are, in every sense, reflections, humanity turned upward, magnified by power, stripped of frailty yet bound by desire. When dawn returns, you find yourself in a sculptor's workshop at the edge of the temple district. The room smells of plaster, cedar oil, and bronze filings. On the table before you rests a half-finished statue, a man's form, tall and stern, its eyes wide and waiting for inlay. The sculptor moves around it slowly, his hands white with gypsum dust. "It's Enlil," he says. "Lord of the air, master of command." He runs a hand over the statue's shoulder, smoothing a line in the clay. He is the breath that moves the storms, the voice that speaks through thunder. But he has a face, because we must look at what we fear. He pauses, choosing a fragment of lapis lazuli from a small jar. Every god needs eyes that can see us. You watch as he fits the gem into the hollow socket. Instantly the face changes. It comes alive. The expression is unreadable, not cruel, not kind, simply aware. The sculptor steps back and exhales softly. "Now he is watching," he murmurs. It is a strange reversal, the worshipper becoming the maker, the creator creating his creators. But perhaps that is the secret Sumer has learned, that divinity is not found above, but reflected from below, in the hands that mold, and the hearts that long. By mid-morning, the streets shimmer with heat. You follow a crowd moving toward the great courtyard, where a festival is beginning. The air is full of sound, drums, flutes, laughter, shouts. Colored banners flutter from the walls, and the smell of roasting meat drifts through the square. It is the festival of Inanna, the Queen of Heaven, goddess of love, war, fertility, and the morning star. Her statue, veiled and garlanded with flowers, stands on a platform at the center of the square. The people surround her with song. A priestess steps forward, her robes embroidered with silver thread that glitters in the sunlight. She raises her hands and sings. "She who rides upon the lion. She who tames the heart of kings. Inanna of the shining eyes. Be present and bless your city." The crowd repeats the refrain, clapping in rhythm. Then the musicians begin a new melody, faster now, almost wild. Dancers fill the space, women and men together, moving with a fierce, joyful abandon. Their bodies glisten with oil, their hair unbound. The priestess joins them, circling the statue, her laughter ringing above the music. You realize that this is not solemn worship. It is something older, freer, the celebration of life itself. Inanna is not a distant deity demanding restraint. She is passion personified, the pulse of creation. Yet she is also dangerous. The songs warn of her temper, of the lovers she destroys, of the wars she inspires. She is love and ruin, birth and death entwined. The people adore her because she mirrors their contradictions. They fear her for the same reason. When the music ends, the dancers collapse in the dust, laughing, gasping for breath. The priestess stands before the statue once more, her voice softer now. "We give you joy," she says. "Remember us when the rivers rise." The crowd murmurs assent. Flowers are thrown, incense burns, and the scent of myrrh fills the air. Later, as the city rests in the heavy heat of noon, you find shade beneath an awning where an old storyteller sits surrounded by children. His beard is white, his eyes the color of river mud. He holds a carved wooden staff and taps it lightly against the ground as he speaks. "Before there was earth," he says, "there was only water. Deep, endless, dreaming. From that water rose the first gods, Apsu, the sweet, and Tiamat, the salt. Together they gave birth to the younger gods, who filled the world with their noise and light. And when the old gods grew weary, they retreated to the deep, leaving the heavens to their children." He smiles, revealing teeth worn to smooth pebbles. But the children were no wiser. They quarreled and built palaces, made rivers, made storms, made mistakes. Each wanted dominion, and so they made humans, to feed them, to serve them, to remind them what humility felt like. The children giggle at the thought of gods needing help. The old man chuckles. "Yes, little ones. Even the mighty forget to eat unless someone cooks the grain. The gods are strong, but they are not clever." He leans closer. "And yet they love us. Do you know why?" A girl shakes her head. "Because we are their memory. Without us, they fade. Every prayer you speak, every story you tell, these are the breaths that keep them alive." The children stare, wide-eyed. The old man taps his staff again, and dust rises in the sunlight like a swirl of spirits. You walk on through the quiet streets, his words echoing in your mind. "We are their memory." Perhaps that is the heart of Sumerian faith, the understanding that gods and humans are bound by need. Each sustains the other. The gods bring rain, fertility, and order. Humans bring offerings, devotion, story. Without one, the other weakens. In the cool hall of a small shrine, you find this truth carved in stone, a relief of a god handing a plow to a kneeling man, the two figures nearly identical except for scale. Beneath them, an inscription: "We till the same earth." The god's expression is calm, almost weary. You trace the line of his cheek with your eyes and realize that it could be anyone's face, a neighbor, a father, a friend. The Sumerians gave their gods human emotions because they knew no other kind. Anger, lust, jealousy, tenderness, these were not sins but the fabric of existence. If creation came from chaos, then chaos itself must have a heart. As the sun sinks, you cross the city toward the temple of Enki, god of water and wisdom. The air near the river grows cooler, heavy with moisture. The temple gates stand open, and inside, the floor gleams with shallow water, reflecting the flicker of torches on the walls. A priest wades barefoot through the pool, pouring oil in slow circles. The surface shimmers with gold and flame. He nods as you enter. "Come! Listen to the speaking water." You kneel beside him, the hem of your robe darkening. The water laps softly against the stones, whispering, murmuring, breathing. "Enki speaks in currents," the priest says. "He taught the first men to dig canals, to write, to think. When the other gods wanted to destroy humanity, he whispered a warning, It is said he loves us more than his own kind. He scoops water into his hand and lets it fall. But even love has a price. When we forget his lessons, he turns the rivers against us. The torches sputter as a draft passes through the chamber. The ripples on the water form fleeting patterns, lines, circles, waves. You almost think you see writing there, shifting and vanishing as quickly as thought. The priest smiles faintly. The gods speak, but never plainly. You rise and look back at the water one last time. It reflects your face, distorted, flickering in the light. For a moment you wonder whether this is what the gods see when they look down, their own likeness, warped but familiar. Night settles again over the city, and the air cools. A storm gathers far off. The air thickens with that metallic scent that always precedes rain. Lightning flashes behind the clouds, illuminating the horizon in brief silver bursts. The dawn after the storm is strange and still. The river glows silver in the first light, swollen but calm. Mud clings to the reeds, to the sandals of those who walk the banks, to the walls of the city that has seen both gods and floods come and go. And within those walls, a legend is stirring. You hear his name before you see him. Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk. 2/3 god, 1/3 man. The poets will say that he carved his story into stone long before any other dared to dream so loudly. The people whisper as you pass. He is strong as the wild bull. He built our walls higher than any flood. He fears no man, nor God. Yet some voices carry another tone. He takes what he wants. He walks as if no other heart beats but his. Who can tame a king born from heaven? You move through the streets toward the palace, past the market stalls and the courtyards heavy with morning smoke. The air hums with tension. Even the wind seems to hesitate. Inside, the palace gleams. Its walls are inlaid with copper, its doors carved with scenes of conquest. Lions slain, enemies chained. At the far end of the hall stands Gilgamesh himself. He is not the giant of myth yet, not the name carved in eternity. Only a man, tall, broad, and unbearably alive. His hair gleams like obsidian. His eyes are sharp, restless, searching for something beyond what the world can offer. He wears no crown. He doesn't need one. His presence is crown enough. He speaks to his council, but his words are not of governance. They are of glory. We are the chosen of the gods, he says. We will build a city so great the stars themselves will envy us. Our walls will touch the heavens. His people obey, but you can see the weariness in their faces. Power, when it burns too bright, consumes its own fuel. The gods, watching from their unseen thrones, murmur among themselves. He has forgotten us, one says. He rules as if he were one of us. Another replies, then let us remind him of his place. And so they shape a plan. From clay and wind they form a man, wild as the forest, strong as the beasts. Enkidu. He lives first among animals, drinking at their rivers, running with their herds. His hair is matted with dust, his skin burnt by sun. He knows nothing of walls or kings or worship, only freedom. When hunters find their traps broken and their game freed, they speak his name in fear. A wild man roams the plain. They say. He walks upright but runs like a lion. A temple priestess, wise in the arts of Inanna, is sent to tame him, not with force, but with gentleness. She finds him at the watering place, his body reflected in the still pool. She smiles, and her voice is low as the wind through reeds. For 6 days and 7 nights she stays with him, teaching him the language of humans, the slow rhythm of touch, the warmth of companionship, the meaning of hunger and fulfillment. When it is over, Enkidu rises and finds that the animals have fled from him. He calls to them, but they do not answer. His heart breaks. He turns to the woman, who touches his face and says, "You are no longer one of them. Come with me to Uruk, where men build walls to keep their longing inside." The city receives him with wonder and suspicion. He stands at the gate, bare-chested, broad-shouldered, his eyes wild but curious. And when Gilgamesh hears of him, his interest ignites like dry straw. "A man my equal?" he laughs. "Then let him come." The two meet in the streets, surrounded by a crowd that hums with anticipation. Without a word, they clash, strength against strength, pride against pride. The dust rises around them, the air fills with shouts. They wrestle until the stones themselves seem to shake. At last, Gilgamesh falters. Enkidu grips his arm, forcing him to the ground, but in that moment, something shifts. Instead of anger, Gilgamesh laughs. He grips Enkidu's shoulder and says, "At last I have met my brother." The crowd erupts in cheers. Two men who began as rivals now stand as one, twin pillars of a single story. From that day on, they are inseparable. Gilgamesh finds in Enkidu the tempering force he lacked. Enkidu finds in Gilgamesh the purpose he never knew he needed. Together they will challenge the gods, the world, and death itself. Their first quest begins with the cedar forest, where Humbaba, the monstrous guardian, dwells. The king dreams of fame, the wild man dreams of freedom, and both see in the forest a test. They arm themselves with bronze blades and axes of shining stone. The elders warn them. Humbaba serves in Lil. His breath is fire, his roar a flood. Gilgamesh only smiles. Then let the gods watch how men carve their own destiny. They journey for days across the plain, through fields and deserts, until the scent of cedar fills the air, sharp, resinous, intoxicating. The trees tower above them like green mountains. Sunlight filters through in golden shafts, and the forest hums with unseen life. When Humbaba appears, the ground trembles. His face is part man, part beast, his voice a rumble that shakes the leaves. "Who dares disturb my lord's forest?" he bellows. Gilgamesh steps forward. "We seek glory. We seek to prove that men can stand where only gods have stood." The battle that follows is thunder and flame. The forest quakes, trees split, the air turns to smoke. Enkidu's strength holds fast beside Gilgamesh's fury, and together they bring down the monster. As Humbaba falls, his voice softens. "Do not kill me," he pleads. "The gods will curse you." Gilgamesh hesitates. Enkidu whispers, "Strike before mercy turns your heart." And so he does. The cedar forest is silent. The smell of sap and blood fills the air. They cut down the tallest tree to build a gate for Uruk, a trophy for their triumph. But the gods are not pleased. From their heights they look down and murmur, "They have slain our guardian." Pride grows like a weed among them. In Uruk the people celebrate. Gilgamesh and Enkidu return with songs and wine, with spoils and glory. But pride draws the attention of another kind of divinity. From the heavens descends Inanna, radiant and terrible. Her voice is like music and thunder entwined. She approaches Gilgamesh, her eyes shining with desire. "Come," she says, "be my husband. I will give you riches, kingdoms, immortality itself." But Gilgamesh, intoxicated by victory, dares to refuse. "What man has loved you and lived? You turned your lovers into beasts and stones. I will not join them." The goddess's face darkens. "You will regret those words." She ascends in fury and begs her father, Anu, for vengeance. He grants her the bull of heaven, a beast vast enough to shatter mountains. It descends upon Uruk, trampling fields, devouring men. Gilgamesh and Enkidu stand against it. The battle shakes the plain. Dust blinds the sky. In the end, they drive their blades into its neck, and the bull collapses with a scream that echoes for miles. The city rejoices, but the gods are silent. That night, as the stars burn cold above the river, Enkidu dreams. In his sleep he sees the gods gathered in judgment. Enlil's voice thunders. "For killing the bull of heaven, one of them must die." The decision falls like an axe through silence. Enkidu. Days pass. The wild man grows weak. The laughter fades from his eyes. Fever grips him. His strength turns to dust. Gilgamesh sits beside him, helpless. "Brother," Enkidu whispers, "we wrestled lions, crossed mountains, defied gods. And yet I am undone by a dream." Gilgamesh takes his hand, the fingers rough, the skin burning. "The gods cannot take what we built." "But the gods can, and they do." When Enkidu's breath stops, the world goes still. The river holds its current. The wind ceases. The king who has never bowed to man or god bows now to death. He tears his garments, smears dust on his face. He wanders the streets of Uruk, crying out, "Must I die too? Must Gilgamesh, who built these walls, fall into the dust?" No voice answers. The gods are silent. Thus begins the next journey, not for glory, but for life itself. Gilgamesh leaves the city, his hair unkempt, his face unwashed. He wanders through desert and mountain, across the great waters, searching for Utnapishtim, the man who survived the flood and was granted immortality. The world he travels through is strange, half earth, half dream. Scorpion men guard the mountains. Winds howl like voices of the dead. Days blur into nights. His sandals wear through, his skin cracks, but he does not stop. At last he finds the old man beside a quiet shore, a figure bent with age, eyes filled with the weight of centuries. Gilgamesh falls to his knees. "Tell me, how did you escape death?" Utnapishtim looks out at the water, where small waves lap against the stones. "There was a flood," he says softly. "The gods grew weary of men's noise and sent the waters to drown us. But one god, Enki, whispered to me in a dream, 'Build a boat. Take the seed of all living things.' I did, and when the flood subsided, life began again. The gods granted me eternity, but it is not the gift you imagine." Gilgamesh clenches his fists. "I will not die as dust. Tell me how to live forever." The old man sighs. "At the bottom of the sea grows a flower that renews youth. Take it if you can." So Gilgamesh dives. The water closes over him. The current pulls, cold and relentless, but he swims deeper, deeper, until his lungs burn. At last his hands close around the flower, its petals pale and trembling like dawn. He rises, gasping, the prize in his hand. "I will take it to Uruk," he says. "I will share it with my people. We will all be young again." But on the journey home, exhaustion overcomes him. He rests by a spring, setting the flower beside him. As he sleeps, a serpent slithers from the water, drawn by the scent. It takes the flower, sheds its skin, and vanishes into the reeds. When Gilgamesh wakes, the flower is gone. He falls to his knees, laughing and weeping at once. "Even the snake will live forever," he says. "And I will not." He returns to Uruk changed. No longer the arrogant king, but a man who has seen the edge of eternity and stepped back. He stands before his city's walls and runs his hands along the stone. The sun catches the copper nails, the marks of countless builders. "These walls will outlast me," he says softly. "This is how we endure." He commands his scribes to record his story, not the victories, but the journey, the loss, the lesson. "Write it," he says, "in clay and stone. Let those who come after know what I learned, that immortality is not living forever, but being remembered." And so they do. The stylus presses into wet clay, and for the first time in history, a man's grief becomes literature. Centuries will pass. The city will fall, rise, and fall again. The rivers will shift. The gods will fade into new names. But buried beneath layers of dust and time, the tablets of Gilgamesh will remain, waiting. Thousands of years later, another pair of hands will uncover them, brush away the earth, and begin to read. The words will still live. The king will still wander. The friend will still die. The serpent will still take the flower. And in every heart that hears the story, the old questions will awaken again. What does it mean to be human? Why do we love when love must end? Why do we build when all things crumble? Gilgamesh has already answered, in the only way that endures. He built. He loved. He remembered. Night settles over Uruk once more. The walls shimmer under the stars, and the river hums its endless song. The city wakes before the sun. The walls Gilgamesh raised still stand, their bricks catching the first faint light like scales on a sleeping beast. Smoke curls from hearths. The smell of baking bread mingles with the sourness of yesterday's beer. The people of Uruk stretch and stir, each returning to their place in the great pattern he left behind. For the story of kings does not end with kings. It settles into the soil, into the rhythm of work, into the hands that shape the world each morning. Civilization now belongs to everyone, to the scribes, the weavers, the farmers, the priests, the slaves. You stand at the edge of the market as the first traders arrive. Their carts creak beneath loads of barley and dates. Goats bleat. The dust rises. A crier calls out the day's decrees from a clay tablet newly dried by the temple kiln. His voice carries across the square. By the will of the gods and the order of the king, the canal gates will open at midday. Workers who neglect their duty shall pay 1 shekel of silver. Those who steal from the granary will be bound and judged before Enlil's priests. His words settle like dust on the crowd, expected, accepted. No one protests. Law, like the river, is now part of the landscape. Power in Sumer is everywhere and nowhere. It flows downward from the gods through their chosen representatives, the Ensi, the city rulers, and outward through 1,000 smaller channels, the priests, the scribes, the overseers, the tax collectors, the merchants. The temples are the true heart of the city, both sacred and administrative. From within their courtyards, decisions are made that shape every life. The high priest counts the offerings, the scribe tallies the harvest, the messenger rides to distant Lagash where you are to deliver a sealed tablet. The gods own the land, but men keep their records. You step into one of these temple offices. The air is cool, heavy with incense and the faint scent of clay. A scribe sits cross-legged on the floor, his stylus moving briskly. Piles of tablets surround him, debts, transactions, prayers, contracts. He doesn't look up as he speaks. The gods may rule, he mutters, but we keep their accounts. Outside, a priest oversees the distribution of grain. Workers approach one by one, each holding a small clay token, their day's labor recorded in miniature. The priest examines each token, nods, and hands over a measure of barley. No coin, no signature, only trust baked into clay. The people move in orderly rhythm, heads bowed but eyes alert. This is how civilization maintains itself, through routine, through quiet submission to the invisible web that holds everything in place. You follow the canal out of the city, where fields stretch wide and green under the morning sun. The air smells of water and growing things. Men and women work in long rows, their feet sunk deep in mud, their hands deft with sickles and ropes. Oxen groan as they pull wooden plows through the silt. The overseer walks among them, shouting encouragement and warning in equal measure. His whip cracks occasionally, not in cruelty, but in rhythm, keeping time with the swing of the tools. Work well, he calls, and the gods will bless your harvest. A woman beside you laughs quietly. And if we don't, the overseer will curse us first. Her tone is not bitter, merely resigned. She wipes sweat from her brow and continues her work. The sun climbs higher, the air thick with the hum of flies. At midday they stop. From baskets wrapped in reed mats, they take small cakes of barley and onions. Children run along the dikes, splashing in the water. Laughter rises, brief and bright, before the day's labor resumes. You realize that power here is not only command, it is endurance. The people obey because obedience is survival. The rivers demand discipline, the soil rewards patience. The king may rule from his palace, but it is the farmers who feed the gods. Back in the city, the palace looms above the streets, a fortress of mud brick, smooth-faced and gleaming with copper nails. Guards stand at its gates, spears tipped with bronze. Inside, the air is cool, scented with oil and cedar. The walls are painted with scenes of hunting, feasting, conquest. A council meets in a shaded chamber. The king's steward speaks first, his voice firm but cautious. The northern fields yield less each season. The canals are silting. We need more labor to dredge them. Another, a priest, nods gravely. We will call upon the temple workers. It is the gods' work to keep the water pure. A merchant interrupts. And who pays for the lost time? Every hand in the field is a hand not at the loom or kiln. Trade suffers while we build walls for the river. The king, younger than you expected, his eyes sharp and restless, raises his hand. The river feeds us all. It must obey, or none of us will eat. His tone leaves no room for debate. The council bows their heads. Power, here, is performance, a balancing of divine right and human necessity. The ruler must speak like a god and think like a farmer. After the meeting, the steward approaches you quietly. Do you see? He says. Every decision is a prayer disguised as policy. As the afternoon wanes, the city's smaller rhythms unfold. Children carry water from the well. Women spin thread under shaded awnings. A potter throws a new vessel on his wheel, shaping it with fingers steady from habit. A herdsman leads his goats through the gate toward the pastures beyond the wall. Above them all, the palace and temple stand silent, the twin peaks of earthly and heavenly power. Between them, life hums on. You stop at a small courtyard where a trial is being held. Two men kneel before a priest judge, their heads bowed. The first accuses the second of stealing a sheep. The second swears by the gods that he is innocent. The priest listens without expression, then gestures to a servant, who brings forth a bowl of water. The river will decide, the priest says. The accused looks terrified, but he obeys. He plunges his arm into the water and retrieves a smooth stone from the bottom. The crowd murmurs. If he emerges unharmed, he is free. If the gods are angered, they will mark him with illness. He lifts his hand, trembling, wet but unburned. The priest nods. The gods have spoken. The accuser lowers his eyes, ashamed. The priest raises his hands. Let peace return to your households. It is justice, of a kind, simple, swift, rooted in faith rather than reason. But it works, because the people believe. As twilight falls, you find yourself in the workers' quarter near the outer wall. The air is thick with smoke from cook fires, the smell of lentils and garlic and sweat. Men sit on low stools, drinking beer from wide clay jars through long reeds. Their laughter is loud, weary, human. A mason shows you his hands, thick, calloused, scarred. Built half this wall, he says proudly. My father built the other half. The king names himself in every brick, but it's our blood that holds them together. He grins, not bitter, just amused. Still, the wall stands. That's enough. You share their drink, warm, thick, sweet. The stars begin to appear above the rooftops. Someone begins a song, slow and rhythmic, about a farmer who married a goddess and lost her to the underworld. The others join in, their voices rough but full. This, too, is power, not the command of kings or priests, but the quiet resilience of those who keep living no matter who rules. Later you wander toward the temple plaza again. The ziggurat looms dark against the violet sky, its peak crowned by a single flame. A priest passes, carrying a tablet close to his chest. You glimpse the inscription, lists of offerings, names of donors, weights of silver. Faith recorded as mathematics. You realize how deeply intertwined belief and bureaucracy have become. Every prayer has a value. Every life, a record. Power is not only felt, it is counted, measured, catalogued in clay. At the plaza's edge, a scribe sits beneath a flickering lamp, inscribing a contract between two merchants. His stylus moves quickly, deftly. 10 shekels of copper for 20 jars of oil, he murmurs. Witnessed by Enlil, Lord of Oaths. He glances up at you. Paper burns. Stone breaks. Clay remembers. Behind him, in the dark, you hear the faint rustle of offerings being arranged for tomorrow's rituals. The cycle continues: work, worship, record, repeat. By night, the palace holds its own ceremonies. Music drifts from open courtyards, flutes, lyres, the soft beat of drums. Servants carry trays of roasted lamb and wine mixed with honey. The nobles recline on low couches, speaking in tones of practiced ease. At the center sits the king. He listens to a poet reciting lines from Gilgamesh's tale, the same story you have already walked through. When the recitation ends, the king nods slowly. He was a greater man than I, he says. Yet he too was only dust. A hush falls. The courtiers glance at one another. Such words are dangerous, yet strangely comforting. For even the ruler feels the weight of the same mortality that bends the farmer's back. The feast resumes. The music swells. But beneath the laughter lies something else, an awareness that all power is temporary, that the crown and the plowshare both answer to the same earth. As dawn approaches again, the first workers return to the fields, the priests to their altars, the scribes to their tablets. The city breathes, steady and certain. Morning spreads across the plain like molten gold. The air is cool, tender, and still smells faintly of wet earth and smoke. The people of Uruk are already awake, their lives unfolding with the quiet precision of habit. But beneath the rhythm of daily labor, the scraping of plows, the hum of wheels, the soft tapping of styluses, something else stirs. Not just survival now. Curiosity. You walk through the streets, where yesterday's trade has become today's invention. The same hands that built canals and temples are learning to shape ideas, measuring, counting, testing the patterns of the world. Civilization has begun to dream of understanding itself. At a corner near the river, a group of workers are adjusting a massive wooden wheel bound with bronze. The sound of creaking wood and splashing water fills the air. You pause to watch as one man pours a bucket of water into a trough, and the wheel begins to turn on its axle, lifting the water upward with small clay pots. A young boy laughs in delight. It carries the river to the fields, he shouts. The man grins, wiping sweat from his brow. Why let the gods do all the work? You realize you are looking at one of humanity's first machines, simple, beautiful, and revolutionary. The Sumerians, forever at war with their rivers, have now turned water itself into a servant. The wheel spins, and each rotation is a prayer answered by reason. The city has always been loud, but the noise is changing. You hear not only the cries of merchants and the rumble of carts, but the crisp rhythm of construction, hammers against stone, copper on bronze, the steady chant of builders counting bricks. 3 cubits wide, one murmurs. 4 high. 2 more for the base. They measure everything: space, grain, time itself. The idea of number has taken root like a new god, invisible yet everywhere. In a shaded courtyard, a teacher instructs a group of boys with tablets spread before them. 60, he says, pressing marks into the clay. The sacred number. From it, all cycles return. He draws a circle with his reed stylus, then divides it carefully. The heavens turn in 60 parts. The moon follows 30. The sun completes 12. Remember this, for the gods themselves count by it. You watch the boys repeat his gestures, their tongues between their teeth in concentration. They are learning not only arithmetic, but cosmology. For in Sumer, mathematics is more than a tool, it is a language for the divine. By midday, the heat is sharp, and the city hums with invention. You follow a craftsman into his workshop, where the smell of metal fills the air. The glow of the forge pulses like a living thing. Bronze, copper mixed with tin, gleams on the anvil. The craftsman lifts his hammer and brings it down in slow rhythm, sparks scattering like fireflies. The gods taught us fire, he says, but this is ours. He holds up a finished blade, the edge thin as light. It reflects his face, darkened by soot. Stone breaks, he says. Clay dulls, but bronze remembers its shape. Tools of bronze change everything. The plow cuts deeper, the spear strikes truer, the chisel carves finer lines. With each improvement, the world bends a little more toward human will. You walk next to the edge of the temple library, where scribes labor under the watchful eyes of priests. Rows of clay tablets line the walls like the bark of a petrified forest. The air is dry and smells of dust, ink, and oil lamps. At one table, two scribes argue softly. The flood came when the moon was dark, one says. No, replies the other, pointing at his chart. The omens say it rose full above the horizon. The waters obeyed the heavens. You look closer at their tablets. They are covered not in words, but in numbers, columns of figures, small drawings of stars, notes on winds and clouds. Astronomy and astrology are twins here, still indistinguishable. Each night, the priests climb the ziggurat with their reed pens and soft clay, watching the movement of the sky. The moon rises, the stars drift, and they record every position with patient devotion. They do not yet know they are inventing science, only that they are listening to the gods through geometry. When you ask one of them why he counts the stars, he smiles. Because they speak, but not in words. We are learning their grammar. He gestures to the horizon, where the last trace of morning haze clings to the air. The heavens do not change by whim. They move with reason. Perhaps the gods do too. As the day burns toward noon, you cross into the artisan's quarter. The streets here are narrower, busier, alive with the scent of dye and leather and sweat. A potter works his wheel, another revolution born from observation. The spinning disk hums softly as his hands shape the clay, steady and certain. Nearby, a weaver leans over her loom, fingers darting in rhythm. Threads of dyed wool crisscross in a pattern as complex as any equation. Every thread has a place, she says, or the cloth unravels. You think of the temple priests mapping the heavens, of the mathematicians marking 60 lines on a circle, of the farmers counting seeds, all weaving their own patterns into the fabric of civilization. Knowledge is no longer a privilege of the gods, it has become a habit of the people. In the heat of the afternoon, you find shelter beneath an awning near the central square. A merchant sits beside you, rolling a small cylinder seal between his fingers. It is carved with minute symbols, lion stars, a man kneeling before a tree. With this, he says, I own what I trade. He presses the seal into a lump of wet clay. When he lifts it, the impression remains, his name, his signature, his story. It speaks for me when I am not there. You hold the cylinder and feel its cool, perfect weight. In your palm lies the first contract, the birth of identity. A person can now exist in absentia, not just in memory or myth, but in law. The merchant smiles. Clay does not lie. That's why the gods chose it. Toward evening, the air cools and the city glows. You walk with a group of temple scholars who carry small clay models, maps of canals, fields, and buildings. They set them down in the dust outside the temple wall and study them carefully. We build first here, one says, pointing to a narrow trench. If the water flows evenly, the next field will thrive. The other nods, using a reed to trace the line of the river. We learned it from Enki, he murmurs, but the math is ours. You watch them rearrange the miniature city, adjusting angles and slopes with patient precision. Each movement reflects the truth observed and tested. These men are engineers in all but name. When the real canals open days later, the water flows just as their model predicted, slow, even, obedient. The people cheer, but the scholars only smile quietly. For them, success is not victory, but proof. Night falls soft and warm. The air vibrates with insects. You climb the ziggurat steps once more, this time beside an old astronomer carrying a tablet and a small bowl of oil. At the summit, the stars stretch wide, countless, brilliant, eternal. He sets the bowl on the ground. The oil reflects the sky like a perfect mirror. He leans over it, marking points with his stylus. "Look," he says, "how the heavens repeat themselves. Every 12 moons, the same star returns to the same place." His voice is low, reverent. "This is how the gods speak truth, not in thunder, but in pattern." You ask him what he does with such knowledge. He smiles faintly. "We measure time. We guide the farmers. We tell the kings when to build and when to rest. And perhaps," he looks up at the stars, eyes shining, "perhaps we learn a little more of who we are." The wind shifts. The scent of river reeds drifts up from below. You feel the enormity of it, that for the first time, humanity is not only building in the world but thinking it. Each mark on the tablet is a bridge between heaven and earth, between question and answer. Far below, the streets still buzz. A physician moves through the alleys with a basket of herbs and a small copper knife. He kneels beside a sick child, murmuring words half prayer, half prescription. "Water from the West Canal, mixed with crushed willow," he says. "Leave it under the moon, then drink." The mother nods, weeping softly. The healer places a hand on her shoulder. "The gods heal through what they made. We only listen." It's medicine in its earliest form, observation entwined with faith. Slowly, the healer's art is separating from the priest's, though neither yet knows it. The night deepens. Torches flicker in doorways. The river murmurs softly. The morning sun creeps over the eastern plain, glinting off the ziggurat's copper plates and the shining canals that feed the fields. The air smells of grain and hot dust. A boy stands barefoot on the steps of the temple, waiting for a man with ink-stained fingers to finish his work. Inside the doorway, the scribe is bent over a long clay tablet, his reed stylus moving with careful patience. Each wedge he presses is more than a mark. It is a name, a year, a heartbeat turned to stone. You draw closer. The tablet is already half filled, lines upon lines of text, each beginning the same way. "After the flood had swept over, kingship descended from heaven." The scribe looks up and nods politely, his eyes bright with the quiet pride of one who holds history in his hands. "We are recording the line of kings," he says, "so that no name will vanish." He gestures to the opening inscription, still wet on the clay. "In Eridu, Alulim became king. He ruled for 28,800 years. Alauga ruled for 36,000. He smiles faintly. "They were not men as we are." You step back into the sunlight. The idea feels dizzying. Rulers whose reigns span millennia, who are said to walk beside the gods, who breathed the same air but never aged. Yet the people speak of them as though they were ancestors, not myths. You walk through the marketplace, listening. A merchant counts his coins and murmurs. "In the days of Dumuzi, the shepherd king, the barley grew taller than a man." An old woman stirring a pot of lentils adds softly. "He sang to the flocks, and they followed him. The earth itself loved him." To them, these stories are not superstition. They are truth woven through memory, half history, half him. The Sumerians do not draw a line between myth and record. They build a bridge of clay between them. In their world, to name a thing is to make it live. And to inscribe a name is to grant it eternity. At the edge of the temple courtyard, you find the royal archivists at work. They sit among tablets stacked in neat piles, copying older texts onto new clay. One reads aloud as he writes. "After the kingship descended from heaven, it was in Eridu. Eridu fell. Then kingship was taken to Bad Tibera. Bad Tibera fell. Then kingship was taken to Larik." The litany continues, a rhythm of rise and fall that sounds almost like breathing. The archivist pauses to wet his reed. It is not enough to build a city, he says. It must be remembered. Otherwise the flood comes again, the flood of forgetting. He presses another line into the clay. Some names are half divine, some fully human, but all carry the weight of heaven. Each king inherits not only the throne but the time of the gods. You realize that these lists are more than chronology. They are a ladder between mortality and eternity, a way for humankind to reach backward toward its own origin. Later, you cross the river by a narrow bridge of wooden planks. On the far side lies a city older than Uruk, its walls half crumbled, its temples sun-baked and silent. The locals call it Eridu, the first city, the city of Alulim. The wind whistles through broken doorways. The smell of salt drifts from the nearby marshes. Everywhere you step, fragments of ancient pottery crunch underfoot. The ground feels heavy with memory. An old caretaker guides you to a mound where excavations have begun. He gestures toward the layers revealed in the earth, foundations upon foundations, each built on the ruins of the one before. Every city is a tower of time, he says. We stand on our ancestors. At the center of the site lies a small, square temple made of clay bricks. A shallow basin sits before it, still blackened from countless fires. The caretaker kneels and touches the stones. Here, they offered bread to Enki. Here, kings knelt before they learned to sit on thrones. You look at the broken altar and imagine the first ruler bending here, his hands trembling, his crown still heavy with wet clay. The line between priest and king, between offering and decree, was once as thin as the smoke rising into the sky. When you return to Uruk, the temple is preparing for the festival of kingship. The city is dressed in banners, drums echo through the streets. At the palace gate, men carry garlands of reeds and gold. The scent of oil and crushed flowers fills the air. Inside the throne room, the new ruler stands before the assembled priests. His robe gleams white, his beard carefully oiled. In one hand he holds a staff carved with the symbols of the gods. In the other, a cup of water from the holy river. A priest recites the ritual words. Kingship descends from heaven, but its weight rests on the earth. Rule justly, for you rule in their sight. The king drinks from the cup and pours the rest onto the floor. May my reign be pure as water, he says. The crowd answers. May the river not rise against you. Then the drums resume, slow, steady, as if echoing a heartbeat that began long before this man was born. Later, in the quiet after the ceremony, you walk through the royal archives again. A young scribe sits alone, comparing tablets. One is old, cracked, and worn, the other new, its surface smooth. He frowns as he reads. The lists disagree, he says. One says Lugobanda ruled for 1,200 years. Another says he was a shepherd who vanished into the mountains and returned as a god. He shrugs. Perhaps both are true. He sets the old tablet beside the new one. We do not erase the old. We copy it, layer upon layer, like the cities themselves. That is how truth survives, not by certainty, but by accumulation. His words linger in your mind as you wander through the archives. Each shelf is a labyrinth of voices, each tablet a heartbeat from a different century. Together they form something larger, not a single story, but a chorus of human memory. Outside, the evening sun turns the city to copper. The river reflects it like fire. You walk toward the palace gate, where a storyteller is gathering a crowd. He sits on a low stool, his voice carrying easily through the warm air. In the days after the flood, he begins, the gods chose the kings to bind heaven and earth. But some were born from love, not command. Some were half divine, half human. The crowd leans closer. The storyteller's eyes gleam. Gilgamesh was one. 2/3 god, 1/3 man. He wrestled the beasts of the mountains and sought the secret of eternal life. He gestures toward the ziggurat rising behind him. Do you see? Even now his walls stand. The gods have gone silent, but their children remain. A child in the crowd asks softly, "Are there still such kings?" The storyteller smiles, his wrinkles deepening. Every king believes he is one. Laughter ripples through the crowd, warm but wistful. The storyteller's gaze drifts to the horizon, where the sun is slipping behind the plain. But the gods measure power differently. They count not the years of a man's rule, but what endures when his voice is gone. As night falls, the palace quiets. You are led to a small chamber where the royal historian works by lamplight. The room is lined with shelves of tablets, each marked with seals of clay. The air smells of smoke and wax. He greets you with a nod. You wish to know why we count the years of kings like we count the stars? You nod. He gestures toward a tablet covered in columns of numbers. Because time itself must obey the throne. Without a calendar, the fields lie fallow. Without records, the gods forget their promises. He turns the tablet toward you. This is the work of generations. Every reign, every dynasty, every flood and famine, all woven into one great fabric. We call it the King List. It tells the story of order carved from chaos. You trace the wedged marks with your finger. Do you believe they truly ruled for thousands of years? The historian's smile is weary but kind. Perhaps not in flesh. But power has its own measure of time. Some reigns last a lifetime. Some last as long as the memory of men. He dips his stylus in ink and adds another line, the name of the current king, the number of years so far. This, too, he says, will one day be ancient. Later you step outside. The air is cool, heavy with the smell of oil lamps and night flowers. The stars shimmer above, calm and distant. You walk to the edge of the river, where the water laps softly against the stones. You think of the first names carved into clay, Alulim, Alauger, and Menluana, and of all the nameless hands that pressed the signs, baked the tablets, carried them across centuries. Each king, each scribe, each story layered upon the last. The flood of forgetting has been held back by memory written in mud. You kneel and touch the wet clay at your feet. It feels cool, alive, timeless. Somewhere within it lie the traces of those first inscriptions, the beginning of history. The river murmurs, repeating what the scribes have always known, that to remember is to rule. Before dawn, a procession moves through the sleeping city. Priests in white robes carry torches. Soldiers bear shields embossed with lions. At their center walks the king himself, silent and solemn. They stop before the ziggurat, where the high priest waits with a bowl of water from the Euphrates. He dips his hand and anoints the king's forehead. "May your reign be recorded among the stars," he says. The king bows. For a moment, the light of the torches reflects in his eyes, the same glow that once shone in the faces of the semi-divine rulers of legend. Then he turns and ascends the steps. The drums beat softly. The people watching bow their heads. In that moment, history folds over itself. The living king walks in the footsteps of the immortal ones. The mortal reenacts the myth. The circle closes, and time becomes memory once more. The river has been rising for days. You can hear it before you see it, that deep, continuous growl, like something alive and restless in the dark. Along the banks, people stand with torches, watching the swollen current churn past. The air tastes of mud and rain and fear. The smell of silt is everywhere, sharp and metallic, like the breath of the earth itself. In the temples, the priests have begun to chant the ancient invocations, voices weaving through the storm like thin threads of hope. Enki, keeper of the deep, hold back your waters. Enlil, master of the wind, close your hand. Their words vanish into thunder. But the clouds do not listen. They hang low and black, pressed heavy against the horizon. The rain falls harder. The streets run brown with water. The air hums with something larger than weather, the sense that time itself is bending. You stand beneath the eaves of a house. watching a woman carry her child through the flood, her robe clinging to her skin, her eyes fixed on the temple tower that still glows faintly above the waterline. Around her, men haul baskets of clay to reinforce the levees, their voices rising and breaking in the roar of rain. The Tigris and the Euphrates have joined hands again, not as lifelines, but as executioners. 4 days the storm continues. The canals overflow, the crops vanish beneath the waves. Livestock drown, homes collapse, and the songs of the city are replaced by the sounds of collapse. You wade through the chaos, through floating reeds and shattered beams, through the cries of people clinging to whatever they can find. The gods, it seems, have changed their minds about the world they made. In the temple courtyard, the high priest stands barefoot in the rain, his robe plastered to his body. He raises his hands to the sky and shouts above the thunder. Why do you punish us, Enlil? Have we not given you oil, grain, the blood of our flocks? The lightning answers with a flash so bright it burns an afterimage into your eyes. The priest drops to his knees. He does not hear. He whispers, or he has remembered something we forgot. Behind him, the ziggurat rises out of the flood like a mountain cut from the dark. The people cling to its steps, each higher to a smaller circle of survivors. From here, you can see nothing but water, an endless, churning expanse where once there were fields and walls and marketplaces. It is as if the world has returned to the beginning. Later, when the rain finally eases, a strange silence settles over the plain. The water stretches to the horizon, broken only by the tips of palm trees and the roofs of drowned houses. The air smells of rot and salt. The sun glimmers weakly through a veil of mist. Among the survivors, a name begins to pass from mouth to mouth, Zayusadra. A man of Shurapak, wise and humble, who is said to have heard a whisper in the night before the storm began. You follow the story as it spreads, told by trembling lips beside campfires built on rafts and temple roofs. The god Enki came to him, they say. He spoke not in thunder but in dream. The council of gods has decided, mankind shall perish. But you, Zayusadra, build a great ship. Take the seed of every living thing. Take your wife, your family, the craftsmen, the beasts. Seal it with pitch and wait for the waters. Some scoff. A fisherman's tale. They mutter. Others whisper. Then how are we still alive? The story grows like the flood itself, carried from voice to voice until it becomes truth. You imagine it. Zayusadra standing on the riverbank, hammering planks of cedar together under a sky already dark with omen. His neighbors laugh at him, shaking their heads. The river gives, the river takes, what can one man do? But he keeps working, sweat and rain mixing on his skin. He seals each seam with bitumen, each board with prayer. His sons carry baskets of grain. His wife gathers birds in woven cages. He looks at the rising water and feels the weight of something vast pressing down, the sorrow of a god who regrets his own creation. When the flood finally comes, it comes not as rain but as release. The gates of the deep burst open. The sea and the sky change places. The air is filled with screams and the crash of breaking earth. Zayusadra drives his family into the ark and seals the door. Outside, the world dissolves. For 7 days and 7 nights, the boat rises and falls on waves that swallow mountains. Inside, the people huddle together, their faces lit by the faint glow of oil lamps. The animals cry and shuffle in the dark. Each time thunder rolls, they whisper Enki's name. Then, at last, silence. Zayusadra opens the hatch. The air is cool and still. The surface of the water glitters with the debris of a vanished world, beams, jars, fragments of statues, a single clay tablet that drifts past like a drowned thought. He weeps, though he does not know whether from grief or gratitude. Days pass. The water recedes slowly, leaving behind islands of mud and ruin. Birds wheel above the stillness. Zayusadra releases a dove. It circles and returns. He waits. A raven flies farther and does not come back. When the ark finally settles on a strip of dry land, he builds an altar from the wood of the ship itself. He lights a fire and offers incense, barley, and wine. The smoke curls upward, thin and gray, disappearing into the pale sky. And somewhere above the clouds, the gods, exhausted, ashamed, gather again. Enlil's voice rumbles like distant thunder. All have perished. The noise of men is gone. At last we can rest. But Enki, ever merciful, speaks softly. Not all. One remains, the one who listened. The one who built. Enlil's fury fades into silence. Then he shall live as long as the gods remember him. And they bless Ziusudra, granting him a life beyond the flood, not immortality, but remembrance. He becomes a bridge between worlds, the last of the old and the first of the new. Back in Uruk, centuries later, the story is still told in the flicker of lamplight. The scribes write it onto tablets, the priests recite it during the season of rains. But each telling changes slightly. In one version, it is Utnapishtim, not Ziusudra. In another, the gods send not punishment, but renewal. The flood becomes a cleansing, a necessary forgetting. The ark becomes the seed of civilization. And through every version runs the same current, that humanity is fragile, but also chosen. The gods may destroy, but they cannot resist creating again. You walk through the streets as the story is told once more, the voices blending with the sound of the river lapping against the embankments. Children sit wide-eyed, clutching each other. Their parents smile wearily, half in faith, half in fear. When the storyteller finishes, he lifts his hands and says, "And so the flood ended, but the water never left us. Every year, it returns to remind us who we are." The next morning, you climb the city wall and look down at the canals. The floodwaters have retreated, leaving a sheen of fertile silt that glistens like bronze. Men and women are already at work clearing debris, patching dikes, sowing seed. Life has resumed its rhythm, cautious but unstoppable. A farmer laughs as he thrusts his plow into the soft earth. "The gods washed the world clean," he says. "Now we start again." Nearby, a scribe sits cross-legged on a dry patch of ground, writing on a tablet that still smells of kiln smoke. His hand moves quickly, his expression serene. "We will remember this one," he murmurs. "Not for the destruction, but for the beginning that followed." You realize that this is what the flood gave humanity. Not only fear of divine wrath, but the idea of renewal. Civilization would learn to rebuild, to record, to endure. At dusk, you follow the river bank out beyond the city, where the water flows quietly between stands of reeds. The sky is violet, streaked with the last light of the sun. The air hums with insects, and the smell of wet earth lingers. You stop where the current slows and pools into stillness. The reflection of the sky trembles on the surface. Two worlds, one above and one below. You kneel and trail your fingers in the water. It feels warm, alive, ancient. Somewhere deep beneath this flow lies the memory of that flood, the sediment of fear and faith, the silt of forgotten names. The river has swallowed empires, carried away cities, erased boundaries. And yet every spring, it returns to feed the land again. You realize that the flood is not only a story of punishment. It is the rhythm of the world itself, destruction and renewal, death and rebirth, the eternal pulse of time. That night, in the quiet courtyard of a half-ruined temple, you meet an old man sweeping water from the stones. His back is bent, his hair white, his hands rough from years of labor. He pauses to rest, leaning on his broom. "When I was a child," he says, "my grandmother told me the flood never truly ended. She said the water hides beneath the earth, listening. When the gods grow angry again, it will rise." He smiles faintly, eyes glinting in the lamplight. "But perhaps the gods are tired. Perhaps they left the world to us." You look around, the cracked walls, the drying fields, the laughter of children echoing faintly from the alleys. maybe he's right. Maybe the gods have stepped back, leaving the flood within us, the memory of loss, the hunger for meaning, the endless need to rebuild. He resumes sweeping. The broom scratches softly against the stone, keeping rhythm with the wind. Before dawn, you return once more to the river's edge. The air is still, heavy with mist. A thin layer of silt covers the ground, glittering faintly in the half-light. You crouch and scoop a handful of it into your palm. It smells of clay and salt, the scent of beginnings. The water has receded. What remains is silence. The silt still clings to the walls of Uruk, streaked like old tears. Fields are reborn from mud. Fish bones glitter in the furrows where barley will soon grow. The air smells of renewal, sharp, green, and faintly metallic. But something else lingers in the people, an awareness, fragile and electric, that unseen forces move through the world. The flood was not only water, it was a message. And now humanity listens. Every wind, every fever, every strange dream feels like a whisper from the divine. You walk through the marketplace at dawn. The stalls are open again, though their roofs still sag with dried mud. Merchants call softly to passing buyers. Potters stack their jars still damp from the kiln. Amid the familiar noise of trade, another sound rises, a low chant, rhythmic, deliberate. You follow it to the edge of the square, where a man kneels beside a sick child. The boy's face is pale, his body trembles. The healer's hands hover above his chest, palms cupped as if holding invisible fire. His lips move without pause, the words falling like beads of rain. By the name of Gula, Lady of the Shining Hand. By the name of Ninjish Saida, who guards the gate of life. Depart, spirit of sickness, return to your dark place. The boy's mother watches, her fingers pressed to her mouth. The healer dips his hand into a bowl of water mixed with crushed herbs, willow bark, mint, something that smells of salt and smoke. He drips it onto the child's forehead, murmuring, "Let the bitterness carry the pain away." For a long moment, nothing happens. Then the boy exhales, a soft, steady breath. The mother gasps, and the healer nods, his face serene. Magic and medicine are the same language here. The gods are not banished from the sick room, they are invited in. Later that morning, you walk with the healer to his workshop. It is a small, dim room filled with the scent of dried plants and clay. Shelves line the walls, crowded with jars sealed by bits of wax. Some contain powders, others oils, others scrolls of woven reed. He opens one jar and shows you its contents, a mixture of crushed lapis, honey, and date syrup. For the eyes, he says, lapis cools the heat of infection. Honey draws out the poison. Dates feed the body while it heals. You ask if he believes the ingredients work because of the gods or because of their own nature. He smiles gently. Both. The gods made the world. To use it is to speak their language. He picks up a tablet etched with tiny symbols. These are the words of protection. He says, not all power comes from hands. Some from the tongue. He traces a line with his stylus and murmurs. A word can open a wound, or close it. Outside, the air shimmers with heat. Along the streets, small shrines have been rebuilt, their surfaces freshly painted with ochre and soot. Incense burns in clay bowls. You see women leaving offerings of grain and milk, whispering names as they set them down, not prayers, but negotiations. Keep the house safe, Nikasi, one says, and I will pour you the first cup of my beer. Guard my child, Lama, another murmurs, and I will light a lamp for you every dawn. Every god has a name, every name has weight. At a corner shrine dedicated to Nana, the moon god, an old woman hums softly, her hands moving in small circles over a bundle of herbs. She sprinkles ash on the ground in the shape of a crescent and says, words travel faster than feet. The moon carries them where they must go. You realize that in this world, language itself is a kind of bridge. between flesh and spirit, illness and recovery, human and divine. In the afternoon, you find yourself in the temple library, where scribes are inscribing charms and incantations on tablets the size of your hand. The room is cool, the light golden. The sound of styluses on clay is soft but constant, like rain on dry soil. One scribe holds up a tablet and reads aloud. When the demon of fever grips the body, let the priest recite this 7 times. Bind the image of the demon with string. Burn it in the flame. And speak the name of Gula, who knows the secret of rebirth. He glances at you and smiles. Each line is a boundary. Once it is spoken, the sickness cannot cross. He lays the tablet carefully aside to dry. The clay remembers the words even after the voice fades. That is why we write them, to trap the power before it slips away. Deeper in the temple, you find a room filled with small figurines made of clay and wax, human forms, animals, even tiny monsters with twisted faces. A priest is arranging them in neat rows, whispering as he works. These are the apisu. He explains. Substitutes for what we fear. The god takes the offering and leaves the person whole. He picks up a small figure shaped like a man with a serpent's head. If one dreams of such a creature, he says, we make this image, anoint it with oil, and bury it beneath the threshold. The dream cannot return. You watch him press his thumb gently into the clay, leaving an imprint like a signature. The hand completes the word, he says. Without touch, the magic forgets its name. He sets the figure down and lights a lamp. The flame flickers across the walls, where inscriptions dance in the shadows, fragments of prayers, lists of herbs, diagrams of constellations. The air feels alive, humming with unseen meaning. As evening falls, you walk through the streets where the healers and priests live side by side. A child runs past, laughing, holding a string of small clay beads etched with symbols. For luck! He shouts, and you notice each bead bears a single wedge, the first letter of a god's name. Words are everywhere now, carved into amulets, painted on doors, scratched into pots. Even the poorest household keeps a small tablet by the hearth, a few lines of protection against thieves, illness, drought. You stop at a doorway where a woman is reciting something softly under her breath while kneading dough. Bread rises only with blessing, she says when she notices you. The East listens. She smiles as if she has just told a secret. At the edge of the city, the river glows under the last light of day. A group of priests stand knee-deep in the shallows, holding torches that flicker in the breeze. They are performing a purification rite for the coming month. Their chant rises and falls with the rhythm of the waves. River of life, carry away our wrongs. River of death, remember our names. Between your banks we walk in balance. Each word echoes against the water, rippling outward until it is lost in the current. You realize that these chants are not merely worship, they are coordination, calibration, keeping harmony between the seen and unseen. When the ritual ends, one priest dips his hand in the river and sprinkles droplets on your forehead. The water is cool, smelling faintly of clay and smoke. The gods hear through the ear of the river, he says. Now it knows your name. Night falls soft and wide. You return to the temple district, where lamps glow behind every doorway. The air is heavy with the scent of oil and herbs, cedar, myrrh, juniper. In one chamber, a young apprentice tends to a sick man lying on a mat. The patient's breath rattles faintly, his skin fevered. The apprentice grinds herbs in a mortar, murmuring as he works. 3 pinches for the heart, 1 for the spirit, 1 for the wind that carries sickness away. He mixes the powder with wine and honey, then feeds it to the man in small spoonfuls. Drink, and the words will follow the medicine. You watch as the patient's breathing eases. The apprentice looks at you, eyes shining. We are not healers, he says softly. We are translators. He gestures to the sky beyond the open window. The gods speak in thunder. We answer in syllables. Later, you find a group of scholars seated beneath the stars on the ziggurat's upper terrace. Tablets are spread before them, marked with lines of text and small drawings of constellations. They are composing hymns to the gods of healing and knowledge, Gula, Enki, Nabu. One recites, "In the beginning, the word was clay. The stylus shaped it, and it lived. In the hand of the scribe is the breath of the gods." Another adds, "The same breath cures and curses. Be careful how you speak." They laugh softly, but their eyes are serious. They understand that power and language are no longer separate, that to name a thing is to hold it, and to write its name is to bind it forever. You look down at the city below, glittering with lamplight. The hum of life drifts upward, songs, laughter, prayers, an entire civilization built on words. Before dawn, you visit the healer once more. He sits by the river, washing his hands in the slow current. His tools lie beside him, bronze knife, reed stylus, small jars of oil. He looks up and says quietly, "Do you know the first word ever spoken?" You shake your head. He smiles. "It was not a command. It was a question." He lets the water drip from his fingers. When we ask, the gods listen. When we listen, we become gods. The river glimmers, carrying his reflection downstream. The sun rises, pale gold on the horizon. In the streets, the city awakens again. The city wakes before the sun. Not with the trumpet of kings or the chants of priests, but with the rustle of hands, soft, steady, practiced. A clay jar being lifted, a door curtain drawn aside, a child whispering to a goat tethered outside. The dawn in Sumer smells of smoke and warm grain, of oil and damp earth. Somewhere, a rooster crows. Somewhere else, a baby cries, then quiets as its mother hums, a tune older than writing, a melody passed down not by tablet, but by heart. You open your eyes to the first light spilling over the mud brick rooftops. The air is cool, almost sweet. The streets are narrow, paved with damp clay and reed mats. From an open doorway comes the clatter of pottery and the hiss of boiling water. A woman kneels beside a small hearth, coaxing a flame to life beneath a pot of barley porridge. Her hands move with the confidence of repetition. This is her sacred ritual, no less holy than the priest's chant. Her hair is bound with a strip of linen, her tunic the color of wet sand. On the floor beside her sits a small clay figure of a household god, its surface darkened by years of soot. She touches its head lightly before tasting the porridge. "May the fire be kind today," she murmurs. Outside, the street fills slowly with movement. Farmers lead their donkeys toward the fields. Weavers carry baskets of dyed wool. The smell of baking bread drifts from the communal oven at the square, a deep, yeasty perfume that clings to the air. A group of boys splash through a puddle, their laughter echoing off the walls. One holds a toy chariot carved from wood, its wheels rolling unevenly through the dust. Another drags a small clay ox on a string, pretending to plow the ground. Their mothers call after them, half stern, half smiling, "Don't stray past the canal!" You follow them toward the edge of the district, where a row of workshops hums with quiet industry. Inside one, a potter works the wheel, a disc spinning smoothly on a wooden axle. His hands are covered in slip, his eyes are calm. He shapes a vessel in a single slow motion, the clay rising between his palms like something alive. "This one is for beer," he says without looking up. "The goddess Nikasi will taste it first." You watch as he carves her symbol, a small barley stalk, into the still damp surface. "Without beer," he says, "the gods grow bored, and men grow angry." He laughs softly, as if the line is older than the city itself. Farther down the street, the smell of roasting meat mixes with incense. The butcher's stall is open, displaying slabs of goat and fish hanging from hooks. Flies buzz lazily, and an apprentice waves them away with a reed fan. A merchant stops to haggle, his voice rising in practiced rhythm. 2 shekels is too much. The flood took half the herds. You should be grateful to sell at all. The butcher snorts. The flood gave us more fish than the gods could eat. Don't argue with a man who owns a knife. Their laughter breaks the tension, and the sale is made. They clasp hands, a gesture as binding as any written contract. Words, clay, handshake, 3 languages of trust. You turn toward the canal. The sun has climbed high enough now to turn the water silver. Women kneel along the banks, washing clothes in rhythmic strokes. The wet fabric slaps against stone, keeping time with their voices as they sing. River of life, carry our burdens away. Leave only the scent of clay and sun. Their children play nearby, tossing pebbles and squealing when a frog leaps. A few young men pass, leading oxen yoked to wooden plows. They wave, and the women call teasingly, "Work hard, or the gods will send weeds." The men grin and keep walking. The world turns with an easy familiarity, labor and laughter braided into one endless rhythm. At midday, the heat presses down like a heavy hand. The city quiets. Doors close, shadows stretch. Only the cicadas keep speaking, their shrill chorus filling the stillness. You find shade beneath a palm near the marketplace, where a storyteller rests on a woven mat. He sips from a jar of beer through a long reed, the liquid cloudy and warm. "Sit," he says, patting the ground beside him. "There is shade enough for 2. You ask him what stories people favor these days. He smiles, his eyes crinkling. "The old ones, always. Gilgamesh and Enkidu, the gods and their quarrels. But sometimes they ask for something smaller, a tale of a lazy farmer who tricked a god, or a girl who baked bread so sweet that the moon fell in love with her." He leans back, eyes half closed. "You see, we don't only worship the gods. We gossip about them too." He laughs, low and musical. It keeps them humble. As the day drifts toward afternoon, the streets wake again. You follow a pair of merchants toward the temple district, their donkeys laden with baskets of dates and grain. The temple is both market and heart, a place where trade, law, and prayer are the same breath. Inside, the air is cool, shadowed by tall columns. A priest sits behind a low table, counting tokens, small clay pieces shaped like cones, spheres, and cylinders. Each represents a measure of goods. A merchant lays his tokens down, and the priest records the transaction on a tablet, pressing each symbol into wet clay. You realize you are watching not just commerce, but the heartbeat of civilization, the first bureaucracy, the first mathematics of trust. When the scribe finishes, he dries the tablet by the doorway, where the sunlight falls just right. "The sun is our witness," he says. "No lie can survive in its light." Outside, a group of young girls carries baskets of wool to the weaving hall. You follow them into a large, open courtyard where looms stand in neat rows. The air is thick with color, indigo, saffron, ochre, the smell of dye and sweat. Their fingers move swiftly, weaving threads into patterns too intricate for your eyes to follow. The rhythm of their work is steady, hypnotic, a soft percussion of wooden beams tapping, threads snapping, laughter rippling like water. One girl pauses to stretch her back. "We weave for the temple," she says, smiling. "The goddess loves fine cloth. She wears it in the wind." She gestures to the horizon, where banners flutter above the ziggurat. "See? She is already showing off." They laugh, and the rhythm resumes. Toward evening, you wander into the residential quarter. The streets are narrow, winding like dry riverbeds. The houses stand shoulder to shoulder, their walls of mud brick painted with faded pigments, ochre suns, blue spirals, the occasional handprint left by a child long grown. A man sits at his doorway, repairing a broken net. He nods as you pass. "The fish are stubborn this season," he says. "Maybe the river spirits want more offerings." Inside his house, you glimpse a small room lit by a single lamp. His wife is grinding grain on a flat stone, her movements slow and strong. The children chase each other around the table, their laughter echoing off the clay walls. The smell of stew fills the air, lentils, garlic, coriander, and a hint of smoke. It is the smell of every home in Sumer, timeless and comforting. As the sun sets, the rooftops glow gold, then red, then deep violet. Families climb to the flat roofs to eat and talk in the cool evening air. You join them. Guests are always welcome at Sumerian tables. A man pours beer into wide bowls, then passes a reed straw to each person. They drink together, the bubbles catching the last light of day. Children sit cross-legged, nibbling on dates and bread. The conversation drifts easily, gossip, jokes, the latest temple decree. Someone mentions a rumor of a new law about taxes. Another snorts. The gods take their share first. The king only collects what's left. Laughter rises, warm and unguarded. For all their reverence of gods and kings, the people of Sumer keep their humor close, a quiet rebellion wrapped in kindness. A woman begins to sing, her voice low and strong. When the stars awaken, the shepherd leads his flocks to rest. When the lamps are lit, the heart remembers home. The melody drifts over the rooftops like smoke. For a moment, the city feels like a single body breathing. Night deepens. The streets cool. Torches flicker along the walls. You walk again through the quiet alleys, listening. From every doorway comes a different rhythm, a child's sigh, a dog's bark, the soft scrape of a broom. Through a window, you glimpse a small family altar. A tiny clay bowl sits beside a bowl of water and a sprig of barley. The water reflects the lamplight like a second flame. Someone has written a short inscription on the wall beside it. For health. For peace. For another sunrise. It is not a prayer to the gods, but to time itself, the quiet hope of continuity. You step out into the open, where the river gleams under the moon. Fishermen are already at work, their nets whispering in the current. A few lovers walk by, speaking softly, their laughter rippling through the dark. Near the river bank stands a small tavern, little more than a reed hut with benches and lamps. Inside, people drink, sing, and argue with friendly fervor. A harp twangs in the corner. Someone claps a steady rhythm, and the room joins in, hands, feet, voices, all woven into one simple joy. You sit at the edge, sipping beer from a clay cup. The air smells of smoke and laughter. A man beside you grins. The gods gave us barley, he says. We showed them what it was for. He laughs until he coughs, then raises his cup toward the open door. To Nikasi, the goddess who forgives all mistakes after the third drink. The room erupts in cheers. Even the musicians laugh. The night feels infinite for a moment, as if the river and the stars have paused to listen. When you finally step outside, the city is wrapped in quiet. The air is cool, perfumed with dust and distant incense. Above, the constellations gleam, the bull of heaven, the lion, the scorpion, stories written in light instead of clay. The mornings are quieter now. At first, no one notices. The baker still rises before dawn to light his fire. The potter still kneels by his wheel. The farmers still walk to the canals. But something invisible has changed in the air, a hesitation, a hollowness. The wind that once smelled of river water and barley now tastes faintly of dust. The old men mutter about the weather. The priests study their tablets and frown. The stars look the same, but the rains are late. And then, one morning, the river does not rise. You stand by its bank and see how low it has fallen, reeds bending over dry mud, fish bones whitening in the sun. The canal gates creak uselessly. Farmers gather in uneasy silence. Perhaps tomorrow, one says. Another shakes his head. Perhaps the gods have turned their faces. The children skip stones where water once flowed. Each splash is smaller than the last. Weeks pass. The fields crack. The barley stalks wilt before they ripen. The air shimmers with heat. Carts rattle through the streets loaded not with grain, but with dust. In the temples, the priests burn incense day and night. Their chants grow louder, more desperate. Enlil, who commands the winds, send the rain. Ishtar, who weeps for the land, open your heart. But the smoke only curls upward, vanishing into the hard blue sky. At the marketplace, tempers shorten. 1 shekel for a handful of flour, a woman cries. That's theft. The merchant shrugs. Talk to the river, not me. Even the laughter in the taverns has changed, brittle, forced. Beer tastes bitter without grain to spare. The songs have lost their endings. By midsummer, the first families begin to leave. They load their donkeys with baskets, pots, a few tools, and set out toward the north, chasing rumors of wetter lands. It's only for a season, they say. We'll return when the gods forgive us. But the city watches them go and feels a shiver of unease. For no one can say when the gods last forgave anything. At night, the wind howls across the plain. Sand drifts against the walls, burying doorways, whispering through cracks. The stars seem sharper now, cruel in their clarity. You walk the streets and see doors sealed with clay, hearths cold, houses abandoned. The city still stands, but its heart is thinning. One evening, in the temple courtyard, a group of elders gathers around the high priest. His face is drawn, his beard untrimmed. The sacred flame before him burns weakly, struggling in the wind. He raises his hands. We have offered sacrifice, he says. We have sung every hymn. We have poured oil into the rivers. And still, they do not answer. An old woman steps forward. Her eyes are fierce. Perhaps it is not they who turned away, she says. Perhaps it is we. Her words hang in the air like dust motes in sunlight. No one answers. That night, the flame gutters out. Soon after, another shadow falls, not from the sky, but from beyond the horizon. The scouts bring word of strangers, tall men from the north, their hair bound in braids, their armor gleaming like the scales of dragons. They come with carts of bronze and horses that snort smoke. They call themselves Akkadians, a soldier whispers. They speak our words, but differently, sharper, faster. They do not come to trade. The city walls, once symbols of pride, now feel like cages. The gates are sealed. The priests bless the soldiers. The people wait. When the invaders arrive, the sky is the color of iron. You hear the drums first, slow, steady, like the heartbeat of the earth. Then the horns. The air vibrates. The walls tremble. The battle is brief. Bronze outlasts clay. The gates splinter. The streets fill with smoke. And when it is over, the city still stands, but its gods are silent. The conquerors take what they wish. Gold from the temples, grain from the granaries, captives from the streets. Their leader rides through the gates in a chariot crusted with dust, his eyes bright and cold. He dismounts before the ziggurat, kneels, and presses his hand to the ground. By this gesture, his translator declares, the gods of Sumer now serve the kings of Akkad. The priests bow, because they must. The people watch, hollow-eyed. The conqueror smiles and raises a cup of beer in mock salute. The gods change their language, he says. Now they speak mine. Time drifts. Seasons blur. The new rulers build their own shrines, inscribe their own names on the old tablets. The language shifts, slowly at first, then all at once. The soft curves of Sumerian script give way to sharper wedges, new sounds, new words. The scribes adjust, for writing is survival. But the songs do not translate. One by one, the old gods fade. Enki becomes Ea. Inanna becomes Ishtar. Their faces remain, but their voices change. You walk through the temple and hear the new hymns, familiar and foreign all at once. The rhythm still flows, but the meaning wavers. The past has been rewritten, and the people learn to read it aloud without flinching. Yet in the quiet corners of the city, some still whisper the old names. Mothers murmur them over their children. Farmers trace them in the dust before planting. The gods are not gone, only sleeping beneath new syllables. Years pass. The floods return, but the people no longer trust them. When the river rises, they see not blessing but threat. The canals silt faster than they can be cleared. The soil, overworked, grows pale and salty. The once green plain turns gray. The barley grows thin, the date palms dry. Farmers move farther and farther afield, digging new dikes that collapse in the next storm. The priests offer new rituals, new charms. Burn juniper, not cedar, they advise. The gods prefer its scent. But even their voices tremble now. At night, the wind carries fine dust that glows under the moonlight, beautiful, deadly. It gathers in corners, fills wells, settles on lips. You taste it when you breathe. The city coughs in its sleep. One dawn, you climb the ziggurat steps and look out across the plain. What was once a patchwork of fields and canals is now a dull expanse of white. The river has changed its course, abandoning its cradle. The horizon flickers with heat. Distant caravans move like ghosts across the salt. The cities of Sumer are islands now, surrounded by the desert they created. Below you, the streets are nearly empty. The once busy workshops are shuttered. The great ovens are cold. Only the temple still smokes, not with incense, but with the ashes of old tablets, burned for warmth. You descend slowly, each step echoing like a heartbeat in a hollow chest. The last king of Euphrates sits in the shade of his crumbling palace. His robe is threadbare, his hands stained with dust. Before him lies a broken tablet, the list of kings, cracked across the middle. He traces the names with his finger. Alulim, Alalgar, Dumuzi, Gilgamesh. He pauses, his voice barely a whisper. They built this world. And I watch it die. A scribe kneels beside him, stylus trembling. Shall I record your reign, my lord? The king smiles faintly. Write this, he ruled until the gods forgot their own names. Then bake the clay well. It will need to last longer than I will. The scribe nods, his tears falling onto the wet tablet. Outside the walls, the plain is empty but for the wind. It moves through the abandoned fields, whistling through the hollow stems of dead reeds. A fox pads across what was once a canal bed, pausing to drink from a puddle that tastes of salt. The sun is merciless. Even the shadows seem brittle. And yet, life clings. A small patch of barley sways near a broken levee, its green stalks defiant against the pale earth. A farmer kneels beside it, hands shaking, eyes closed. It's enough, he whispers. It's enough. He does not know he is among the last. But his gesture, the planting, the prayer, the stubborn faith, is the same one that began it all. Night returns. The city sleeps in fragments. Somewhere, a potter still works by lamplight, shaping one final vessel. He hums as he spins the wheel, a tune learned from his mother, who learned it from hers. The vessel is simple, unadorned. When it is finished, he inscribes a single line along the rim. For whoever finds this, know that we lived. He sets it aside to dry, then lies down and closes his eyes. The lamp burns until dawn, then flickers out. Centuries will pass. The sand will bury the walls, the houses, the fields. The river will wander farther away. The names of the kings will fade. But one day, a future hand will dig into the earth and find the pot still whole. It will lift it carefully into the light, brush away the dust, and read the words carved there. The wind moves gently over the plain. It carries dust, yes, but also memory. What once was river is now a shallow scar, silvered with salt. The reeds have vanished. The laughter of children, the songs of priests, the murmur of wheels, all gone. Yet beneath the crusted surface, something waits. The earth of Sumer still breathes. Its lungs are clay, its heartbeat hidden deep. And then, after centuries of silence, hands return. At first they are strangers, wanderers from the north, hunters turned herders, traders following the old dry riverbeds. They find the mounds, great humps of earth rising from the desert like sleeping beasts, and they wonder what bones lie beneath. They dig. They find bricks. They find tablets. And the world begins to remember itself. You watch as a man kneels in the dust, brushing away the soil from a corner of fired clay. The surface gleams faintly in the sun. Lines, too deliberate to be random, snake across it. "What is it?" someone asks. The man squints, tracing the markings with his fingertip. "Writing," he whispers. "The kind my grandfather spoke of, the language of the old kings." He holds the fragment high, and the light catches it just right. The symbols shimmer, wedges, strokes, curves, the faint heartbeat of civilization. It has been 1,000 years since a scribe pressed these marks. But the clay has endured. It has outlasted famine, invasion, flood, and silence. Clay does not forget. Soon others arrive. Builders, merchants, priests. The new generation of rulers who will give themselves names like Babylonian and Assyrian, though their blood still carries the dust of Sumer. They raise new cities on the bones of the old, Ur's walls rebuilt, Erida's temples repaired, Uruk's ziggurat rising again from the sand. The world turns once more toward order. You walk among them as they dig trenches for foundations. Each time a spade strikes stone, they uncover remnants of the past, jars, statues, tablets, seals. The workers call to one another. "Another god's face! Another name!" The foreman shakes his head. "Let the priests decide whose ghosts they've found." By night, in the torchlight, the new priests examine these relics: broken statues of Inanna, fragments of hymns to Enki, tablets bearing laws written long before their own. They look upon them with awe and envy. "They built the first," one murmurs. "We can only copy." And so they do. The world begins again, but it carries the voice of the old. In the new cities, scribes press the same stylus into fresh clay, their hands repeating the motions of their ancestors. The words have changed. The language now Akkadian, not Sumerian, but the shape of thought remains the same. The gods have new names, yet they wear familiar faces. Enlil becomes Bel. Inanna becomes Ishtar. Enki becomes Ea. The myths are retold, reshaped, but never erased. You listen as a priest recites in a temple of Babylon. "In the beginning, when the heavens above had not been named." The cadence is different, the rhythm new, but the melody beneath is ancient, a faint echo of Sumer's first breath. The Babylonian scribes build their libraries with fierce devotion. In rooms lit by oil lamps, they copy and recopy the texts of the ancients. The Epic of Gilgamesh, once whispered on cracked tablets, is rewritten in neat, sharp lines on clay and stored in rows that seem endless. A young apprentice asks his teacher, "Why do we write what is already written?" The teacher smiles. "Because every word saved is another life remembered." He gestures toward the shelves stacked high with tablets. Each one is a voice. Some whisper. Some command. None are silent. The boy touches one tablet carefully. It is cool, heavy, unbreakable. He smiles, as if holding a heart still beating after centuries. In Assyria, farther north, the legacy of Sumer turns sharper, colder, more ambitious. The kings here believe themselves chosen not just by gods, but by history itself. You walk through the palace of Ashurbanipal, where reliefs cover the walls, armies marching, lions slain, captives kneeling. Yet amid all this conquest, another treasure lies within, a library. Thousands of tablets sorted by subject, medicine, astronomy, ritual, myth. The king himself boasts, "I have read the writings of before the flood." He says it not as poetry, but as fact. In his chambers, scholars sit cross-legged, studying the old Sumerian texts by lamplight. Some of the words they can no longer pronounce, others they guess at. But they preserve them, carefully, reverently. They understand that to control knowledge is to control time. You stand among them, the air heavy with dust and oil, and realize, the past has become a weapon. The same clay that once prayed now commands. And yet, beyond palaces and empires, the smaller legacies endure too, the quiet ones. In every market, merchants still use cylinder seals etched with ancient motifs, winged bulls, spirals of sun, the tree of life. These images are older than their languages, older even than their cities. They roll them across clay contracts with the same satisfaction as their Sumerian ancestors. At home, women still bake bread in round clay ovens, the scent of barley and smoke the same as it was 1,000 years ago. Children still play with small clay animals, their laughter echoing down narrow alleys that mirror the streets of vanished Uruk. When asked where their ways come from, they shrug. From our grandmothers. The continuity of life, invisible yet unbroken, is Sumer's truest legacy. Centuries blur again. The empires rise and fall like the tides they claim to control. Babylon becomes Persia. Persia becomes Greece. Greece becomes Rome. Each new people carves their victories over the ruins of the last, yet the shape of civilization never truly changes. The temple becomes the church. The scribe becomes the scholar. The prayer becomes a poem. You walk through time as through mist. The reeds by the river have turned to papyrus, then parchment, then paper. The stylus becomes quill, the quill becomes pen. But the movement of the hand, the gesture of thought, made visible, remains the same. Somewhere, a monk copies a story onto vellum, his candle guttering. The words he writes. There once was a king named Gilgamesh. He does not know that the story is already 4,000 years old. He only knows it feels true. Much later still, the world forgets again. The old cities vanish beneath the sand. Their names fall silent. The rivers shift and hide their traces. For 2,000 years, no one speaks the name of Sumer. The world remembers Babylon because its towers touched the sky. It remembers Nineveh because its kings were cruel. But the first, the cradle, sleeps unseen beneath the dust. Until one day, centuries later, explorers digging in the Mesopotamian plain uncover a brick stamped with strange marks. They lift it to the sun. What language is this? They ask. It will take another century before the marks are read again, before scholars, kneeling over fragments of clay, decipher the first written words humanity ever made. They will sound them aloud, haltingly at first, and the language of the gods will live once more on human tongues. You stand in a modern museum now, though it feels no different from a temple. The air is cool, the light quiet. Behind glass rests a single tablet, no larger than your hand. Its edges are chipped, its symbols worn. You lean closer and read. He who saw the deep, who knew all things, Gilgamesh. The clay is 3 millennia old. Yet the words feel new, almost breathing. The stylus marks are deep enough to cast tiny shadows, the fingerprints of the scribe still visible in the edges of the tablet. You press your palm to the glass, and for a moment the distance between then and now collapses. You can almost feel the heat of the kiln, the weight of the wet clay, the heartbeat of the man who shaped it. He lived, he wrote, and because of that, he never truly died. The legacy of Sumer is not in its kings or its wars. It is in its language, the idea that thought can outlast the body. Clay turned memory into permanence. Stone turned speech into structure. Between them, humanity learned how to exist beyond itself. The Sumerians did not seek immortality in flesh. They found it in inscription. Every word pressed into clay was a rebellion against forgetting. Even now, when we write, we echo that same defiance. You return one last time to the river plain, not as it was, but as it is. The reeds have grown back in patches. The wind ripples across the water. Somewhere beneath your feet, the remains of Uruk lie buried, each layer a whisper of a vanished world. You kneel and pick up a small fragment of clay, smooth, sun-bleached, anonymous. It could be part of a jar, or a wall, or a tablet. You turn it over in your hand. It feels warm, familiar. For a moment you imagine all those who touched it before you, the potter, the scribe, the merchant, the child. Their fingerprints overlap like shadows. The past presses gently against your skin. You drop the fragment back into the dust. The wind covers it. But you know, someday, someone will find it again. Because clay endures. Because stories remember. Because humanity refuses to be silent. The light begins to fade. The sun sinks over the plain, gilding the horizon with the same glow that once touched the walls of Ur. The air smells of dust and river and time. You close your eyes and listen, not for gods, not for kings, but for something smaller, steadier. The scratch of stylus and clay. The whisper of breath over words. The endless murmur of people naming the world so it will not vanish. The wind carries it still. And so, the story flows onward. From ancient clay to modern ink. From forgotten temples to the pages of the present. Toward the last quiet truth. That the first civilization never truly ended. Because we are still writing its name. The evening is warm. The air smells of dust and rain that will never fall. Somewhere in the dark, the river moves, older than the cities, older than the stars reflected on its surface. You stand on the edge of the plain, watching the last light slip away. Beneath your feet lies the buried memory of everything, walls, temples, bones, and words. It feels alive still, humming faintly in the soil. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it, the low murmur of time remembering itself. The rustle of reeds, the sigh of clay, the whisper of old gods who once walked among men. Everything that was Sumer is here, though unseen. The night breeze drifts through the grasses, soft as breath. You close your eyes and the centuries begin to fall away, one by one. The ziggurats rise again, their stairways glowing in the moonlight. The canals shimmer, full of water. The streets bustle with laughter and voices. For a moment you are there again, among the first people, the first dreamers, the first writers. The city hums with life. Clay jars clink. Music spills from doorways. The smell of baking bread mingles with incense and smoke. A child chases a goat through the alley, laughing. And somewhere, a scribe leans over a tablet, pressing the night into clay. His hand trembles slightly. He does not know that what he writes will outlive empires. He only knows that it matters. He whispers to himself, as if to steady his hand. This is how we speak to the future. You open your eyes. The vision fades. The night returns, vast and quiet. For thousands of years, the world has turned, and yet, the lines of that tablet remain. Pressed by a man long gone, read by eyes not yet born. That is the secret Sumer discovered, the secret no flood could drown, no empire could erase. That humanity could make memory solid. That thought could survive its thinker. That words could carry the dead across eternity. And so, civilization was not just built from stone and grain and blood. It was built from the defiance of forgetting. You walk along the dry riverbank. The stars shimmer above, endless and old. They watch the first fires in the plain. They watch the ziggurats crumble. They will watch after you are gone. But you feel no despair. There is a peace in knowing that you are part of this same current, the one that began when the first Sumerian hand shaped clay and found meaning in marks. It continues through you now, in your words, your gestures, your remembering. Civilization is not a place. It is a chain of hands passing a flame. You find a broken tablet half buried in the dirt. Its edges are smooth, its surface faintly marked. You lift it carefully, brushing away the dust. The symbols are almost gone, but one line remains, a curve, a wedge, the ghost of a word. You cannot read it. No one can. But you feel what it means. It is a word of endurance, of persistence, perhaps of love. You set it back down gently, as if returning it to sleep. The wind covers it once more. The horizon glows faintly, not fire, not sunrise, but memory itself. You walk toward it, slow and unhurried, as if through time. You pass the ruins of Uar, where the moon god's temple still stands in fragments. The stones catch the starlight, pale and solemn. A few reeds grow between them, whispering softly in the wind. The air feels heavy, but not mournful. More like reverence. You imagine the city as it once was, ships at the docks, priests chanting from the ziggurat, musicians playing in the courtyards. You can almost hear their rhythm, distant but steady. For a moment, the ruins flicker between then and now, alive and gone, present and past, layered like clay itself. You realize the truth: the past never truly vanishes. It simply changes its form. You sit beside a cracked wall and look up at the sky. The constellations shine exactly as they did 5,000 years ago. The bull of heaven still hunts. The scorpion still guards the horizon. The same stars the Sumerians mapped with reed and string now burn over you, unchanged, eternal. You think of the scribes who first charted them, their hands steady, their eyes wide. They saw not gods, but patterns. Not chaos, but design. They taught the sky to speak. And in doing so, they taught us that the universe could be read, line by line, like a great tablet. The stars above you are not just light. They are script. The universe is written, and we are still learning to read. You rise and continue walking. The ground is soft, scattered with fragments of pottery, beads, bones. Each step feels like moving through the residue of dreams. A thought stirs, not your own, but ancient. That perhaps the gods were never above us, but within us all along. That the divine spark humanity once built ziggurats to reach has been burning quietly inside every mind since the beginning. When the Sumerians looked upward, they saw themselves reflected in the stars. When they wrote, they were not recording the will of gods, but their own dawning self-awareness. Civilization, then, was the first mirror. You look again at the broken clay beneath your feet and realize, every tablet is a reflection. Every word a face. They are not relics of the divine. They are proof that the divine was human. The night deepens. The air cools. A faint mist rises from what remains of the river. It curls around your ankles like memory, soft and persistent. You walk slowly, letting it guide you. The land feels endless, but not empty. You sense others walking beside you, countless unseen companions from every age, the potter, the priest, the shepherd, the scribe. They walk with you in silence, their footsteps blending with yours. The sound is soft, rhythmic, eternal, the heartbeat of civilization. You realize that history is not a line. It is a circle. Every step we take echoes one taken long before. Every word we speak has been spoken before, reshaped by time but carrying the same pulse. We are not the descendants of Sumer. We are Sumer, still dreaming. You stop at a small rise overlooking the plain. The stars above are mirrored faintly in the sand, where crystals glitter like distant lamps. The world feels suspended, between darkness and dawn, between ending and beginning. You remember the flood, the priests, the kings, the laughter of children, the songs sung to gods who are now only names. You remember their joy, their fear, their hunger, their hope. And you realize, everything they felt, we still feel. The shapes of our tools have changed, but the shapes of our hearts have not. They longed for meaning. So do we. They feared oblivion. So do we. They built, they broke, they rebuilt. So do we. This is the final truth, not that we inherited civilization, but that we are still creating it, every day, with every act of memory, every word written, every kindness offered in the shadow of mortality. The story never ended. It only changed hands. You watch as the horizon brightens, the first faint glow of morning. The sun is returning, the same sun that once rose over the ziggurats and fields of Sumer. Its light touches the broken stones, and for a heartbeat they shine like gold. The world exhales. The wind moves over the plain, lifting a thin veil of dust. In that breath, you feel everything at once: the weight of the centuries, the warmth of the living, the echo of the dead. You whisper into the wind, not a prayer, but a greeting. We remember. The wind answers, carrying your voice outward, across the empty plains, across rivers and seas, across time itself. It mingles with all the voices before it, and all the ones still to come. Together they form the single, endless song of civilization. The sun climbs higher. Shadows retreat. The ruins glow softly, and for a moment they seem to rise again, the temples, the towers, the homes. The people of Sumer move through them, unseen but eternal. A woman grinds grain. A child dips his hand in the river. A scribe writes. A god listens. The scene flickers, present and past woven together like threads of light. And then it settles, quiet and whole. This, you think, is immortality, not a body unaging, but a memory unbroken. The Sumerians reached for heaven and instead found eternity here, in the soil, in the words, in the endless act of remembering. And through them, so have we. You sit once more on the ground and scoop up a handful of dust. It runs through your fingers, soft and cool. Somewhere within it are the atoms of old walls, old bones, old dreams. You let it fall slowly, watching the wind scatter it. The particles glitter in the morning light, drifting upward like sparks. This is what remains of the first civilization, not ruins, not relics, but the proof that we have always reached beyond ourselves. They looked to the stars and saw gods. We look and see galaxies. But the gesture is the same. The need to wonder. The will to build. The refusal to be silent. You rise and begin to walk back toward the horizon, the sun at your back, the earth warm beneath your feet. The wind hums softly, and you hear the echo of a voice, not one, but many, blending into a single, gentle murmur. We built the world so you could remember us. Now build your own, so we may live again. You smile. The world feels vast, yet intimate, a great story still being written. You are a sentence in that story, a breath within the same long exhale that began between two rivers. The clay is no longer wet, but the words are still soft within you. They move, they reshape, they live. You keep walking. The sound of your steps fades into the hum of the plain. And as the light grows, the story eases into its final breath, not an ending, but a resting. The river glimmers faintly in the distance, eternal, unchanged. The air shivers with the faint smell of wet earth. You close your eyes and whisper the oldest words humanity ever made, not in Sumerian, not in any tongue, but in the language of silence. We are still here. And the earth, warm beneath your hand, answers, so am I. The wind moves once more, carrying both voices away, across time, across memory, across the endless dawn. And so, as the night settles into light, may these echoes of the past guide you gently into dreams. The story flows onward. Always.